The final Jeopardy music.
Right. Greetings, one and all, to another edition of the Breakfast Club Jamboree. We have the gang here: Serious Mind, Bionic Dance, Agent of Doubt. Hi, guys and gal.
Yeah. How are things?
Yeah, spirits, despite the fact that the country is falling around me. You know what I mean? I really feel like it's not hyperbole anymore to say, "Hey, things are falling down." You know, our systems are failing us, and I don't know how to really contend with that. I mean, there's so many different places to start this week, but since Rob has just come in, I'll let you lead, Rob. How you doing?
I like turtles.
Well, that's a true controversy. I'm a myself, you know.
I think my favorite turtle is Raphael from the original series when he was voiced by Rob Paulson.
Okay.
I wrote on a turtle back when I was like 4. That was fun, but that was a long time ago.
Wow, I had a pet turtle once. I don't even know what happened to it. I think my parents gave it away because the tank stank. So, yeah, man, not very good. Speaking of little critters, check this out, right? Can you see this?
Whoa, trilobite.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
That's a doulobite or a do not lobite.
Trilobite, right?
No, there is no trilobite. Sorry, I'll just
trilobite. That little water bug is like 400 million years old.
That's awesome.
And it's one of my most treasured possessions, just for that exact fact. Oh, hello, Green Machine. How you doing?
So, okay, so
in the chat.
you want an opening that's a little bit more serious?
Go on.
I'm always
Okay, yeah. I am in full-blown campaign mode.
I saw that. Great.
These came.
That might be the very first time I've seen your last name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So that's where my mind's at. I'm in full steam campaign mode. So.
Yeah. Well. Best of luck. How goes it? Are you getting any more cooperation from your people?
No. I mean, the signs are 2 weeks late from the printer. The person who is in charge of designing the sign forgot something that's legally supposed to be on the sign. They forgot to add it onto the sign. And my campaign manager who approved the sign missed it completely. I found out yesterday. So today, the treasurer of my campaign had to print up 600 labels. And that's what Peach and I just put 200 on. And we got 100 more that she's working on while I'm broadcasting.
Wow.
Now, the people who see these signs, does it open up their mind?
No.
Okay. Are they happy now? Sorry. It's all I could hear in my head every time you said the word.
There is a hole in your mind.
Rob, I'm happy for you with your signs, but I'm about to come at you because I thought it was like campaign suicide that Trump got his Rona 30 days out from the election. But then I heard that Rob got Facebook banned 30 days out from the election. I'm like, well, I expect more from Rob.
I got 30 days banned on Facebook for sharing a screenshot. And the screenshot says, girls aren't even real. They're like birds. And that got me banned for 30 days.
I mean, I can see how someone might decide to interpret it as hate speech, but I don't think it is.
I mean, do you feel threatened by that, Kate?
No, I'm feeling confused by it. I'm feeling very confused by it.
The original post was written by my oldest, Devin, Mini Dev. He wrote it on a comment thread to somebody, and basically for everyone in here has probably heard of, if not both, at least one of these two memes. One is, since quarantine, there's been a meme going around that there's no such thing as COVID. Lockdown and quarantine is so the government can change all of the batteries in the birds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's that. And the other one is that is a lot older. It's about as old as the internet, is that there are no girls on the internet. We've all heard that one, right? So it's basically a combination of those two memes. And yeah, for some reason, Facebook doesn't like it.
Okay, the stupidest Facebook ban I ever got was for no good reason whatsoever. I was in this 80s group, I still am, where people were posting album covers of like, I'm trying to remember who it was. The only one coming to mind is Lionel Richie. Oh, and Michael Jackson. They're all like lying like this on their side on the album covers. Right. And that reminded me of that picture of Burt Reynolds where he's lying on the floor naked, but you can't see anything. He's hiding his shame and all of that. I figured, what the hell? Let's post that, too, because I think it's funny. And that got flagged for nudity. I protested. Facebook went, yeah, we got that one wrong, but we're not lifting your ban. Have a fun month.
Well, wait a second. So they said you didn't actually violate the rules and they were still making you ban. That's fucking ridiculous.
Their system for protesting a ban is broken. Every time you try to submit something, it says, this won't work. We couldn't process your request.
Well, the thing is, what gets me too about that is, the irony is the picture you were posting is basically like that was, what those album covers were emulating was that picture. So here you are effectively posting the source. And you're like, oh, you can't have that. And you're right, you can't see anything. It's
I don't know. I mean, I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was fucking pissed.
Well, it's like Tracy Harris posted an article, and she was actually just sharing something that was already on Facebook. And it had an article, and it was something about like some indigenous people somewhere. And so it's somewhere, wherever these people live, they don't generally wear much in the way of clothing, if anything. And so you could see this guy standing there, but it's in shadows. You can't actually see him. You're just seeing a silhouette. And you could just barely make out like the kind of the part of his penis, but you saw that it was there. You didn't even see it. And it was like shadow peen, and she got banned 3 days for that, The suggestion of penis.
Well, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a documentary or something about some African tribe where rather than like walking around in loincloths or naked or whatever, they had these big, huge, like weird tapered sticks that they would just plug it on and tie it around, and they just walk around with this huge plant erection everywhere they go. It's weird.
I'm not sure that's Africa. I think that's Southeast Asia.
Either way, I mean, I'm not married to which country they're from.
So judgmental. I bet you they're really concerned about your shirt and think that's weird.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta go Kate on this one. I think tying a big stick to your dick and walking around is kind of strange.
Well, there's all these weird things. Like I was on Twitter. Someone mentioned this thing that apparently 16% of guys do, where they're in the shower and they grab their scrotum and make a bowl out of it. And when it collects water, they put their dick in it like it's drinking, and they go, ha ha, look what's happening. And I was like, that's a thing? Guys do that?
I've never heard of anyone doing that, thankfully.
Well, hop onto Twitter. I posted the exchange I had with someone about it, and I'm still boggled to this day.
Yeah, that boggles my mind. I mean, the other thing too, though, is funny about wherever that country that is where guys are tying the stick to their dick. I mean, if they're using their penis to tie it, it's like then they're really packing if they can actually tie it in a knot.
I remember it was like ropes or vines that they used like a belt, but still.
We've already been talking about genitalia. I mean, bodes well.
Well, think about it though. If you could tie your dick around a stick, you're gonna get dates.
Oh dear. So, on to lighter subjects.
Anyway, I'm not going to say it.
No, go on. Go on.
Okay, listening to my straight friends talk, they'd kind of rather a guy didn't hit bottom.
I understand. Yeah, that could be painful.
Just saying.
Wait, I was like doing election stuff and I wasn't paying attention. What the fuck are we talking about?
We're talking about wrecking somebody's cervix.
Mostly about the fact that sometimes a guy can be too well endowed.
Knocking on the cervical door.
I actually saw Nina Hartley at a go-go bar years ago, and after her set, she did a Q&A, and people were asking her, "Oh, did you do this? You do that? Were you with this guy, that guy?" And I don't forget who it was that they mentioned, but she said, "Oh, I don't fuck horses." She's like, "I'm 7 inches deep. The guy says he's 10 inches long. Fine, cut off 3, then give me a call." The things you
I got in trouble the last time I talked about this kind of stuff, so I don't want to do that anymore.
Oh man. Well, I think
no. Anyway, yeah, man. So bit of a week since we all met here before.
Mhm.
You know, last Saturday I was pretty sort of skeptical, although heavily leaning towards yeah, he has it. And then when he came back and stood on the top of the steps and took off his mask and shit, and he was clearly in distress, I thought, well, Trump's really not clever enough or a good enough actor to be faking that, so maybe he really does have it. Right? But maybe this whole maybe this is like the lull before the storm, or maybe he's had a miracle fucking recovery because he's had
he's all pumped up full of steroids. I mean, everything you're seeing him, all of his appearances on camera, the green screen video they did make him look like he's outside. Everything that he's doing, everything that is, none of it is really him. It's all the steroids. Right. I mean, like Frankenstein at this point. Go ahead.
Trump is so afraid of showing weakness that I don't think he'd fake having it.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. And he admitted today, or I guess the White House admitted today that he's got lung congestion. Which, if you think about what lung congestion actually means, that's actually bad. I'm not a medical person. I'm not going to say it's pneumonia, but it sure as hell sounds like pneumonia, because when you're congested, you're not congested in your lungs. You're congested up here. But if you actually have, because I have different times that I'm wheezing, coughing, and I go to the doctor, and they're like, "No, your lungs are clear. You're everything. It's all bronchial." But if you're actually lung congested, that's bordering on pneumonia, if not actually pneumonia.
So you're saying Trump needs to worship the ancient Sumerian god of Wanahakalugi?
Yeah, and then some. Yeah.
But what do you all make of the fact that Trump made the doctors at Walter Reed sign NDAs, even though the Hippocratic thing should, prevent them from disclosing anything he doesn't permit them to disclose anyway? So why should you have to have a double protection if you already believe that?
So he can sue them.
Yeah, that's why.
It's also the person that heard of it.
So he can sue them.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that's how he rolls. So, I mean, he makes everybody sign one. And like most of them aren't really even enforceable. What they do is they scare people. Right. I mean, the ones that he had people that work in his administration sign, those are not enforceable. But those people they stand by him anyway because they're afraid to have to go through the ringer.
Right. Especially if you can't afford to defend yourself, because I remember seeing something recently that someone said, if you were going to try to defend yourself from that kind of libel suit or slander suit, you could be looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $200,000. So, and that's if you win.
Yeah, so, the defense alone can break you.
Yeah.
So I mean, and then there's Christie, by the way, Chris Christie. Here in New Jersey, not that anybody's really missing him, but the fact that we haven't seen or heard anything from him for 7 days is like, wow.
He checked out.
Well, earlier today, I read that
he just got let out.
Was he?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe that's what happens when we're doing the signs.
people on Facebook, and that means I don't know I can trust it, say that day 9 is the most critical day that really decides someone's fate. I have no idea what day we're in now for like Trump and the other people at the Rose Garden massacre.
Yeah.
This would be day 9 or 10 for Trump, depending on whether he had the virus when he was in the debate. And the fact that he refused to get tested right before the debate and wanted to get on stage with Biden, I kind of see as like attempted murder, you know?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty dark place. I have to admit, my brain went there as well. You know what I mean? Because if he thought, hey, you know, they had this whole honor system. They said, oh yeah, we've been tested, we're clear. And considering the character of the people we're talking about, I'm surprised they allowed an honor system to go through. You know. Yeah.
Well, and the same thing with Lindsey Graham. I mean, the next debate in South Carolina is off because Jamie Harrison just said flat out, we're not debating unless you get tested, because you've been around a lot of people who've been sick. And Lindsey Graham refused to get tested, and I think that says to me he probably believes he does have it, and he's afraid of what that means if he does. So he won't get tested. Otherwise, because if you thought you were clean, you'd actually want to get tested.
Everybody is the guy in the zombie movie who doesn't want to tell anybody they've been bit.
I think that it would be probably difficult to prove intent on Trump's part. So criminal negligence is probably a charge that could stick. It's just my guess. I mean, I'm not trained in this shit. That's just a guess based on watching too much TV about like lawyers and detectives and shit. So don't pay any attention.
But he didn't want to do the next debate because it wasn't in person, and because then it's not worth his time, right?
Well, but also they can mute him.
Well, what they said at the time was that they arrived too late, too close to the debate start time for them to take a test on the spot, and so they let them pass on the honor system. But frankly, they should have just tested them anyway and started the debate a few minutes late. I mean, it's not like anyone's life is going to end because the debate was 15 minutes late getting off the ground. You know what I mean?
Oh, speak for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and the next one, it's like, yeah, he won't do it because it's not in person. Yeah, because they can mute him.
Mm-hmm.
His entire debate strategy is to talk over Biden and try to force him to stutter. That's what I mean. That's literally what the last strategy was.
Right.
And you know, Pence was worse than Trump when it came to interrupting and talking past his time. I wanted to smack the man.
The other thing too, a big part of that is not only does he not want to be able to be muted, but also being in person and getting on somebody's case and kind of getting in their face is way more intimidating than doing it in a forum like this. I see people do that all the time. That they try to use their presence, especially if someone is tall, and we know, like with Trump, even when he would meet other world leaders, where he would like that. I don't know if you ever saw the handshake he does, where he literally pull them toward him. And that's a very, domination kind of move. He likes to, it's so somebody yelling at you when they're right there, as opposed to, like because here's the thing: if you and I are doing the Skype thing, I can mute you, even if the moderator won't. I don't have to listen to you, and you're not there and omnipresent.
Well, the one that like the domination move that always sticks in my mind is like they're on a stage. It's Trump and a bunch of like other world leaders and shit. And he just elbows his way through to the front and then just stands there like some petulant child who goes, "This is my place. This is what I deserve." And I'm just watching going, oh, the arrogance of the man.
But you want to know what's fucked up about that? As horrifying as it is for us to watch that, that actually is a very American thing to do as far as Europeans are concerned. When they see that, they think typical American. He's just elbow his way through because they're all a bunch of assholes.
I went to LA a couple of years ago with a bunch of like fellow atheists. I don't know if you know Data Jack. He was there and a bunch of other folks. And like there's one thing that people do that I absolutely hate is if they're in a group and they're on the sidewalk, they can't do like layers or one by one or anything. It has to be this big roadblock that like gets in everyone's way. So me, the only considerate fucker, stands behind everybody else, which means, yeah, I get to be less social interacty, but I'm also like inconveniencing fewer people. I am so not the typical American. Hell, there's British people who go, you can't be American, you used a semicolon properly. So,
well, here's the funny thing though, because I've done not a massive amount of travel, but certainly a decent amount, and it's weird. Like Europeans that I've met have kind of we're kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of people. They see, because the thing is, the people that most Americans actually travel to other countries are more like us than the people that we're talking about. So they're like, they see us on TV and they see us in our shows and they're these bombastic assholes, and then we show up and they're like, so people are prepared to think, oh, fucking Americans, and then people show up and they're like, oh no, you guys are all right, and I'm like, yeah, we're kind of two different type of people, basically.
Yeah, I'm a bombastic asshole.
Well, me too, but that's not when I travel.
Well, I mean, on the topic of cultural stereotypes that are bullshit. I mean, my favorite band is Swedish. I've seen a lot of interviews. I've known a bunch of Swedish people, and I've never known any of them to speak in that weird, bouncy, sing-songy, yeah, we come from Sweden voice that just doesn't seem to exist. You can hear little tiny shades of it, but you'd have to magnify it so much to get what we get out of Swedish stereotypes and parodies. It's just, I don't get it. What happened?
Totally, I had to give a ride to a couple of people that were Swedish once, and they were speaking to each other in Swedish, and tonally it sounded a lot more like Russian, which makes sense. They're right there, but it didn't sound like the hurdy.
And while we're at it, not all Canadians are nice.
Amen.
Well, yeah, but even if we exclude Quebec, I mean, sorry, I don't like Quebec.
I've personally never met a Canadian in the flesh who wasn't pleasant and friendly to me, although I have met some on the internet. But that's true of everybody on the internet. You'll always meet some category of person who bucks the trend. Either they're nicer than you're expecting them to be, or they're not as nice as you're expecting them to be, or whatever.
I lived in Buffalo for like one long, cold, horrible year, and I spent a lot of time in Canada because I was dating a Canadian woman. And yeah, there's lots of, I mean, there's plenty of cool Canadians, obviously, but I encountered a lot of asshole Canadians, it was kind of shocking, actually.
Sounds like a band's name. Asshole Canadians.
You had a girlfriend from Canada.
So the thing was, he worked in Niagara on the Lake, or at least part of the time. And so when I would go up to see her, and so she worked in a bar, and so we're sitting there, and like guys sitting near me, they're like, because there's like about half the staff were black, and these guys were just out and out, like you would think they came from Alabama. They were just end this and end that, and being really nasty and shit like that, and they didn't give a fuck. So it was really kind of shocking because that was the first experience I had like that in Canada.
Clearly, Phoenix Rider's not in the chat yet because she's from Alabama.
Hey, my father's family is all from Alabama. My father's from Alabama, so Alabama's fucked up.
I feel like every day I get an example of why Americans are stupid. My example today from Trump was that today he had a rally that was supposed to be for black and brown people. They all got on the White House lawn. Black and brown people being, disproportionately affected by COVID. He gets them all together, not social distance, not requiring masks, within spraying distance of him, and he's standing a little bit higher than them, speaking to all of them. And I'm like, this is supposed to be like him trying to get more black and brown people to vote for him. Never mentions them in his speech.
Of course.
Well, yeah. But he's spraying himself over them, and he has not tested negative for COVID.
Yeah. Did
He
you
has
see
not
that?
tested negative yet.
You see that clip of Candace Owens speaking at that event? It's just, I don't know. It was a very strange look that she was doing. Like, she looked like Steve Bannon, and like the distance between Candace Owens and Steve Bannon visually is pretty far.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how she got so close to looking like Bannon, but I mean, she's wearing like this weird natty professorial sport coat over a blue shirt, and just standing with this posture. I don't know. It was a very strange look, and it was like, if it hadn't been for her voice, really, I could barely recognize her. It was really weird. I don't know what she was going for.
I can't wait for Candace Owens to get the Stacey Dash treatment. Because
Candace Owens calls her new organization she started.
Oh no! What?
Oh, Candace Owens.
Blexit.
I have very. I can't have it. I have no for Candace Owens, at least not her internet persona or any of the things that I've ever seen her say on the internet or on the television. Other than that, I'm sure she's really nice.
No, not now.
Oh yeah, sure. Stacey Dash was a shill for the right wing for a while, and then when she was no longer useful, they jettisoned her. So she's been kind of quiet.
I mean, on the one hand, I've read a few articles on Twitter today about how most of the people who were at the rally at the White House today they had their transportation and accommodation paid for, as well as all those blue T-shirts, which they were asked to wear as, so it looked like a thing, and it really looked like a thing because there was all the people in the color, and it was a thing, and wow, what a cool thing, right? But obviously it wasn't a cool thing.
Hey guys.
Hey.
I'm sorry. I'm going to turn my light on here in a minute, and I apologize for being late. But there was just stuff and things, and you just have to deal with me in the way that I look, basically in something half a step removed from actual pajamas.
Cool.
Whatever.
I don't know. You look like
as regards his thing today. His advisors must be telling him not to. Trump is out of control, right? His people can't even control him, clearly, because there's no way that he's being advised that these are really good moves for him.
Oh, he's totally falling apart.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks.
Did something happen between like last night and today with the whole White House gathering of 200 people or 2,000 people or whatever?
No, he's just like drugged at the eyeballs, and it's showing is all.
Yeah.
The difference now is that he actually looks drugged as opposed to just acting like he's high all the time on something crazy.
Yeah.
Amy, and don't worry, you look good no matter what you're wearing.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
Well, I mean, okay, you guys can live for another day. Thank you. I mean, whatever. Sometimes there's just days I'm not sure I want to look at my own self, and therefore I wouldn't blame anybody else either. It's mostly the thought process there. But
hey, I gotta look at this in the mirror every day, so you know.
You look like you just got a haircut, man. You look all right. Yeah, see, you're all good over there.
That's right. You haven't been on for a while.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry about that. The last couple of weeks have just been a thing, and I won't give you the whole details. But I will say that right now, even though I look so frump, I feel so good for it. Like, you don't even know, because this whole week, since what day are we on? We're on Saturday. So since last Friday, I have been, with the exception of last night and the night before. So I've been sleeping in my camper trailer. And so while that's great and all, it is a little teardrop trailer. It's not a huge thing. It's a little thing. But the reason for that is because we went on a camp trip. That's fine. That's all to be expected. But then we come back from that and it wasn't raining. And it's the only time I've had my trailer all season. So I decided I was going to work on painting the outside of it some more since I haven't had a chance to do that all year. So all week long, the thing is that I have to sleep in it if I keep it at my complex. Otherwise, security comes by in the middle of the night and then wants to call the tow truck and have it towed to the tune of like $1,000 because that happened to me once. Yeah, it cost me $972 to get it out of impound. So it was crazy, and that was a year ago or something like that, and whatever. So now, and the thing is, it pisses me off every time because they always come by and they're like, you're blocking garages, and I'm like, well, that one is empty, and I own both of those, so leave me alone. Like, I'm literally like, the management knows that I'm here, but we have, that really super eager 1:30 a.m. in the morning security guard whose monthly report consists of found an open garage door, notified tenant, they closed it. Like, so.
Could the dude possibly have a quota?
I literally have had homeless people living in the utility closet that's outside my side of the building, like right outside my window, against the wall I share with my closet. Homeless people living in it, but security can't manage to deal with them. No, they have to deal with me and my trailer right in the middle of a parking lot because I'm painting it, whatever. So in order to prevent that, because the tow truck cannot legally tow you if you are right there and just get in your car. Just like they cannot legally ticket you if you are right there and get in your car. So I sleep in the trailer so that when they roll up with their diesel, I just pop on out and I'm like, oh, that sucks. Drove all the way out here for nothing. And then they want to give you flack. And I'm like, but look, here's the keys. Drive away, like around the block, like, so, and that's what I do now, but it's really hard to sleep on that sort of a bed for like a week. So basically last night and the night before, the first 2 nights in like a week, I got to sleep in a real bed, and I was like, and then literally I got up late because I fell asleep to the dulcet tones of one of those histories of the ancient worlds. Did aliens do it? And I love the aliens guy. I actually want to know what thought process went on in somebody's head that they should do their hair like aliens, like that guy.
Yeah, he looks like a Centauri from Babylon 5.
I know, right? How did he even get to that point? So now that I've completely hijacked, yes, yes. And what made him decide to do that? I mean, and what's that guy's name? Is it Lando? No. What is that guy's name? Lando Calrissian is Star Wars. But it's
Lando Malari.
Okay, so like the Star Wars theme park in Florida, they called it what, Galaxy's Edge or something? What? It's Orlando Calrissian, and we know it.
Orlando Calrissian, that is so excellent.
And the character you were thinking of was Lando Malari.
Londo. Oh, I'm really close. So it's like.
Oh, I thought you were trying to remember the name of the aliens guy, not the Centauri. Oh
wait. The aliens guy has a name? Like, he just looks like some weird modern reincarnation of Beethoven in my head. I don't even know.
Well, I suspect that when he was yanked out of his screaming mother as a squalling, helpless infant, someone said, "Aha, it's George." So
his name is Giorgio Tsoukalos.
I love watching that guy. I don't know what it is.
I had no idea I was that close. Oh my.
Giorgio Tsoukalos.
I never even looked that far into it. I just think he's great and hilarious to look at. So I love, like, he's my favorite history channel.
Well, especially in the It's Aliens meme, he looks exactly like a Centauri. Like he was on Babylon 5 and then they took a picture of him or something.
I have like a small game in my head of whenever I see him come onto the show of trying to judge how baked he is, because you can tell, like when you see that guy, sometimes his eyes are like super glass, like aliens, man. And then like other times he's a little more there. So it's like.
So a few years ago, I got this invite to be on Tosh.0, and I went.
Wow.
And everyone keeps asking me what he's really like. Well, when the camera is off, oh my, does he come off as really stoned to the eyeballs? like I wasn't 100% certain he was awake and seeing me when he said hi.
Wow.
But, then the camera gets on him and it's like he just did 10 lines of coke, so...
maybe he did. He's like the show guy, so, maybe he has enough money to do them both, right?
Or maybe he just is saving it all up for that 1 hour a week, or whatever.
Hey,
well, apparently, Alex Jones. Apparently, like when the camera's off, he's substantially different. And I was watching an interview with somebody who they weren't being interviewed with him.
Conspiracy guy, right?
They were in the studio at the same time as him, and
yeah, that was David Pakman.
Yeah, and he's sitting there, blah, 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 and then the cameras go off, and he's just like, and he just turned it off like an instant. And,
right.
and if you were actually that jazzed, that fired up, that you don't just turn that off. That takes a while to work out of your system. He was just like, whoop.
Yeah, I think that was David Pakman you're talking about.
I think so.
Yeah, he's told that story a number of times. And, of course, he had Kelly Jones, Alex Jones's ex-wife, on his show, and he was asking her about that. And, because, of course, Pakman for a while has sort of suspected that Alex Jones was more a character than anything. But according to his ex-wife, that's not the case, that he is actually just very manic. And certainly a manic person can sort of have really rapid mood switches. So it may be that that's just what David Pakman witnessed.
Okay. Now the one thing though too is when he was doing his custody case to get his kids, he basically had to acknowledge that he was full of crap.
Right. And that was part of what Kelly Jones was pushing back against, was this idea that it's all just a performance. Because obviously she lived with the man for however many years.
So has anyone else noticed that the people who do like the sort of young, I don't really want to say hipster guys, but whatever, who do like the news, whether they're on the left or the right, they all seem to have gone to the same barber. I mean, you look at like Pakman, and then you get to what the hell is his name, Kyle Kolinsky, and all of those guys. Hell, look at Venom Fang X. They all kind of look like the same guy, just a little bit.
Well, just
what's that about?
Just like the militia guys, all scraggly beard and
just a little bit inbred.
Yeah, just a bit,
It's like that dude that stands on the street corner in Seattle handing out counterculture outfits.
Yeah.
Speaking of right wing effects, what about Michigan?
Yeah. So this was funny.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Joe, you just mentioned the militia groups, and that's another thing that's really kind of captured my attention this week because it's kind of terrifying.
I think he froze.
Or you just
I think it's hard to maintain that particular position that perfectly for that long.
But he kind of looks like Pavarotti, except for his hair is red to be a little bit.
Like if Pavarotti was a Viking.
Oh dear.
He finally started to say something. He said it's kind of funny, and then all of a sudden he froze.
I cried when Pavarotti died. Okay.
Oh dear. Yeah. No, but what do you guys think? I mean, because this whole right-wing thing's been brewing for a long time, this whole electric boogaloo and all that kind of shit. These people have been training, they've been recruiting, they vet their members, and like when Trump likes to compare these people to Antifa, and so do a lot of people online in the right wing, they like to compare these people to Antifa, and there's no comparison. whatsoever. You know, it's.
Although I'm a little surprised we don't have this on the left, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who are even more frustrated with this whole thing than I am, who are probably out there getting their gun licenses as we speak. I'm kind of surprised we're not hearing about the same kind of stories, but on the left.
I'm not surprised that we're not, because it just, I think generally speaking, it's the things that make you be a person on the left make you, I think, less likely to be violent in general.
I think you can only push people so far.
Well, right, but you think,
I think that
again, the attacks from the left tend to be on property. Attacks from the right tend to be on people.
Fair enough.
I think it's kind of coincidental that they all happen to be right wingers. I think they just happen to be antisocial assholes.
Nope, Rob Rose.
Oh, look,
Wow. Okay. Do not
down
put
there.
me in that square. I don't want to be in that.
That square is cursed. There you are. We couldn't hear you, Robbie. You froze.
Wow. Okay, I was saying I think the fact that they're right wingers, I think that's just kind of coincidental. I think they're just a bunch of antisocial assholes who hate the government and don't want to be told what to do. And I think they're just psychopaths. The fact that they're all right wingers, I think, is coincidence.
No, I don't think so, because I think right wing ideology attracts people like that.
Yeah, I know I harp on the alt-right playbook every week, but they have a really long video on there about how to radicalize a normie. And they're doing this kind of thing deliberately to people by invading communities, usually fan communities, actually, and slowly ramping up the Nazi talk until a bunch of really lonely nerds who don't want to leave the community that they loved so much just let themselves be radicalized so they don't have to go away.
Yeah, because you think about, like, on the left, you know, the people, the guys who hate the government, and you know, that it's you know, I'm not picking on Jack. I'm just going to play Jack and like Bo of the Fifth Column. You know, that's who we've got. You know, Jack doesn't look like, I don't think he's a violent guy. And again, you know, if you look at left wing, like eco terrorists, for instance, they don't go around killing people. They burn, you know, again, it's an attack on property, because leftist mentality tends to be that property, the way that our society divides the wealth and divides the property, is inequitable. So just by attacking the property, you're attacking the cause or the symbol of that inequity. Whereas the right wing tends to be very much about, it's, you know, it's the same way they follow people. They follow Trump. They like Trump. His policies are irrelevant. They love Trump. It's the person, right. And they like, and that's the reason why he did the whole thing of saluting, because there's all, for them, it's all about symbology. You know, the shining city on the hill and standing there with your foot up on the rampart. It's all imagery, and it's all about people. That's why we don't like the governor. So don't take her to court. Kidnap her, kill her, all this kind of stuff. That's their mindset.
Well, that's why I get so deeply frustrated with people who are trying so hard to get me to vote for Biden, who say, oh, but Bernie endorsed Biden and you want Bernie for president, so you're going to follow what Bernie said, right? And I'm like, you remember I was liking Bernie because of his policies, right? That's got nothing to do with people. And the very concept seems incomprehensible, even to left-wingers. That I would care far more about what gets done than who does it.
Well, this goes back to Hobbes with that idea that, you know, conservatism at its root is that most people are bad, and therefore the proper office of government is to restrain that natural evil.
Right.
You know, and liberalism being most people are generally good, and so the proper office of government is to backstop and support that good. But if your worldview is that everybody's born into sin and, you know, we're naturally fallen, and one of the things that is a part of that is that there's all this room for them to believe about themselves that they are exempt from this natural evil. So any of these groups of militiamen or whatever terrorists, their whole feeling about themselves is that Clint Eastwood character, you know, that I'm the good cop going against the bad system. And so, and it's very personal. It's about individuals, and you can cure the evils of the world by taking out certain individuals. And, you know, I'm not going to say I don't participate occasionally in the fantasy of like, what if Cecil Rhodes never existed, you know, or something like that. But, you know, and everybody's asked the question of what would you do to baby Hitler? But ultimately, we know that the things that come up, if there hadn't been a baby Hitler, there would have been a baby some other guy, you know, who would have done basically a similar thing, maybe not at the exact same time, but
Hitler's the easy one to replace, really, because it wasn't actually his genius in the Third Reich. I mean, he was the Donald Trump of the Reich.
Right.
So here's what we do. You get a time machine, you take Donald Trump back to like 1920 something, get him in shape, get him to grow a mustache, you know, and then we can replace actual Hitler with Trump, and then we won't have to deal with Trump now, and we already dealt with World War II. The only problem is that time machines will kill you because, you know, in 1955, the Earth was way the fuck over there. So now I travel in time, but I'm in deep space.
I love this. That the part of this that's troublesome to you is that time machines will kill you. None of the rest of it.
Well, no, but Kate is right about this. This is a bugbear for me too, is that you can't have time travel without also space travel, and it has to be FTL space travel, because you have to go to the place that Earth was in space.
Okay, so what you do is you take Trump back to 1920, and then you use baby Hitler to strangle him.
There you go.
Well,
and I chose 1955 completely randomly.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like it's Back to the Future or anything. But to Jack's point about the individual, this is the reason why too. If you think about the way the right wing reacts to collectivism, the whole idea that we have to do things collectively is anathema to many of them. Whereas the left, that's kind of part and parcel. Even left-wing anarchists, as far as I've been able to discern, still have the concept of collectivism. They just don't have a government running it. That's all.
Right. It's more collectivism than ever. It's
right.
I mean, so I'm speaking as a former anarchist. I'm kind of now. You would call me a big government liberal because I do believe in social services, and I don't think that humans can really operate without going back to a tribal world, which you already know. I'm very much a proponent of pre-agrarian humanity. If we could only go back.
Well, one thing I was thinking about earlier today. You know, like that whole thing where a slave used to ride behind the emperor whispering, you know, you're just like a mortal dude, right? You know, the whole time, so he doesn't get too big for his britches. I think we need to bring that back.
I did too, because I absolutely need to be rich enough that I have anybody following me around saying anything. I mean, where's your guy? Like, what?
But,
I don't listen to him. I mean, what?
So you think about right now what's going on with people who don't want to wear masks. Again, the idea that it's like, I'm an individual, and so they think it's all about their own personal choice, and zero thought whatsoever to what effect that choice could have on other people. And as I've said in previous hangouts, you know, if you actually believe the principle of non-aggression, you would actually accept the responsibility that your actions could harm others. You know, it's all nice to say, you know, my right to swing my arm ends at your nose, but if you don't acknowledge when you hit people in the fucking beezer, then you actually don't believe in it. You're full of crap. It's just a platitude.
So here's my question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, because it might derail what's happening right now, so I should not interrupt.
Then the answer is 12.
Or
37. 37.
Somebody say, come on, somebody say 69 and 42.
8675309.
The answer is 42. The answer is always 42.
I'm hard to
to the universe and everything. It's 42.
Yeah, but I still think 12 is the funniest number just because of its name.
Because it doesn't follow the conventions of any of the other numbers. It is, never mind, I will not
It
go
is the
into
counterculturist number ever.
It is.
And it's like Zwölf in German.
I mean, what I was wondering was, A, what on earth did you think anarchy was? And B, what made you decide that you weren't of that philosophy anymore?
Okay, so I mean, I've gotten pretty deep into what anarchist philosophy is. I was a syndicalist. Syndicalism is a form of unionism on more or less state or town level. The idea that you could essentially take the structure of what we understand as a workers' co-op, that's what syndicalism basically is, and you manage a town that way. And really, like, the Amish are syndicalists. There's all kinds of societies that exist. Anarchism is not impossible, but I've always taken it as, like, I used to joke all the time, hi Kazum, that anarchism is the perfect system for houses of 8 people or less.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I mean, my basic understanding of anarchy is no one's the boss of anyone, and which is silly as an idea to me. But for, like, I pretty much think that this holds true for literally every type of governance over a body of people, which is that as long as there are few enough people that everyone basically knows everyone, whatever system you use, you can get it to work. Whether it's democracy, whether it's communism, it is the second that the society itself literally grows to a population number that
above,
now there's a space between there's enough people that you can't look at your neighbor and say, hold on, why does that guy have $1 billion and the rest of us all get $100 a year, right? When there's enough space between that, then people start doing things because the accountability goes away. The societal accountability goes away. And
and in that case you need some kind of structure that is, and it's the reason we have a law-based society, is because theoretically we have some kind of accountability structure that is based in writing and based in a formal set of laws. And that's ultimately, you're right, that's why I don't believe that anarchism can work on a state or nation level. But I would love to live on a small plot of land with a few people. And
you should keep knowing me, because we're getting there. We're like,
see, the thing is you have to trace all the problems back to its source, and the root of all evil.
It's Shatner.
The thing that caused all the problems, all of them can be traced back to this one thing.
Shatner.
Well, other than Shatner, before Shatner, agriculture.
Yeah,
yes.
that's
Well, I mean, people have been getting kind of aggro.
Well, once you stake out land, and of course some land is more arable than others, then now you're going to have that imbalance. And again, to what Jack was saying before, size really is the big thing. I had a conversation with somebody who was, totally, they were an anarcho-communist, and I'm like, look, well, again, if you had a bunch of little pods of people, each of those pods may be fine, but the big thing is, we live in a technological society, and resources are not evenly distributed around the globe. So if you didn't have some sort of auspices to make sure that you had equitable distribution of the resources, you won't have an equitable distribution of resources.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, syndicalism talks about how if you have, say you have a pod of 8 or 20 people who are living in more or less an anarchist sort of small society, and then you've got 8 or 20 of those that each, a representative from each of those small communities is then its own pod that isn't hierarchical, it's representative. And then you have that, and it's theoretically it's fractal, but theoretically.
The problem with that, though, is that eventually someone's going to disagree with someone else. And, they're going to scream, well, there's no rules for this, so I get my way. And the other person screams the same thing. And eventually you're going to have to figure out a way to resolve that, which is, I think, why we need all these laws, all these leaders and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So, I'm not sure. And also, another concern for me as well, I think about what you're describing, and I'm like, would that kind of society have ever gone to the moon? Because I kind of want to do that too, and if they wouldn't, then I'm not sure I want that.
Well, especially considering like what you're really talking about too, Jack, is when you start putting representatives, you've effectively created a government again. However loose, maybe it's more equitable and more even. There's it's not hierarchical government, but you still end up creating a government-like structure.
Yeah, no, and this is the fundamental misunderstanding that everybody has. Anarchism is not a non-governmental structure. You can call any sort of group of collectivized, organized people a government at some stage. Anarchism is about anti-hierarchism, not about anti-rules, and this idea that there aren't laws and things like that is also not correct.
How does it even deal with the idea of hierarchical personalities? Because it doesn't matter if you have as few as 2 people. One of those people is going to be ultimately the person that is the primary decision maker.
The alpha.
Right? If you want to call it that. I guess. I'm so careful about using those words sometimes because I think they're so misused in certain spheres.
But not like wolves, because that's all.
Wolves aren't like that, actually.
Yeah. The whole wolf pack thing is totally debunked.
Like, you will have a more dominant personality of those 2, and that creates an immediate social hierarchy between 2 people. And then, so how do you? So I guess
and you have problems with charismatic people too.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Right? Is that comes into play, and where does that rank with? We're talking. There's hierarchy that is constructed because we've made it or refused to make it. But if you refuse to make a defined construction of hierarchy, you will then fall back onto the cult of personality. Right. And
that's what tribal societies had quite often.
Yeah. There's more to it than that, though. Sometimes you just need someone who's in charge because you don't have time to discuss it as a committee. Where it's like, okay, the meteor's coming, we have an hour, we're not convening Congress, someone launched the fucking missile to get rid of it. That kind of thing. So, you do need to have an actual ultimate leader sometimes.
Right.
Well, in certain things, the other thing too, the other issue that a lot of people don't understand is that, and I haven't talked to some people, and Jack's very well studied on this. I'm very impressed with Jack's. He knows a lot of stuff, and I'm learning a lot from Jack, which I really appreciate that. But I've talked to some people, and I'm like, do you understand then that if you do this, that means you have to share in roughly equal risk, and that's the one thing, because I was talking to somebody, and they were complaining about their work situation, and I'm like, I'm pro labor, so I was definitely sympathetic to a point. But then, again, this was the year I was having a very bad year as a business owner, and they're just going off about how basically if you're a business owner, you're just wealthy and you're taking everybody for everything. And I'm just like, you know what it's like to go 17 weeks without collecting a single penny as a paycheck because you have to pay your employee. Yeah, Rob knows. You have to pay your employees, and you have to pay the rent, and you have to pay the insurance, and you have to pay your vendors, and you have to hold on to some of that cash that maybe you would like to take for yourself, but hey, I got to make sure I make payroll next week or the week after. And I'm like, or if you're prepared to take that on equally, beautiful, then I'm with you. But if you're not, then you're kind of full of crap.
Right.
Well, okay, I need some clarification on something you said earlier, because you said that you're very pro-labor. So does that mean, because it kind of implies it a little bit, that you're against C-sections? I'll just see myself out.
Yeah. She's here all the week.
Actually, I do have to go for a minute. I have cats to feed, so I'll be right back.
The thing about
I wanted to say real quick, talking about the social structures and hierarchy and such like. And I give an awful lot of thought to the way different civilizations have existed throughout history. And for example, most of us, I'm sure, learned about the ancient Egyptians when we were kids in school. And Egyptian civilization lasted in one form or another for like 3,000 or so years, as a sustained civilization. And I think we in the United States, we put an awful lot of cultural value and personal value on individual liberty and self-expression. And I personally value those things a hell of a lot. But I think when you look back over human history, the societies who put a lot of emphasis on conformity tend to be more at peace with themselves. And I don't like saying that because I'm a nonconformist. I think everybody should get to do their own thing. But I wonder if we've put individualism and personal liberty on such a pedestal that we've made an ungovernable country. What do y'all think?
Yeah, so I think about this a lot too, because there's no denying that Japan is a more functional society in many ways than the U.S. They get many of the benefits of not being highly hyper individualistic in an incredibly clean city. They're very courteous to each other. There's a lot of thought about what effect everybody has on everybody else. On the other hand, it's not the best society to be a woman in. There's an awful lot of
What are you
rape.
talking about? We can sell our underwear in vending machines in Japan. That's not a winning factor. What?
I think
and also they're not as innovative as we make them out to be. They're very good at taking something and perfecting it. They're not as good at original ideas.
Right. Well, I mean, the perfectionism does come from a very long tradition, and obviously there's huge, enormous value to that. My point only is that there's always going to be some trade-offs.
Yes.
We think of ourselves as being incredibly innovative, and yet, like the thing that people really don't take into account very often is that after World War II, America was 6% of the global population, and we had 50% of the world's wealth. I mean, that's a tremendous advantage that does not come down to our innovative potential.
Oh, no, a huge part of it was just that Europe was stomped to shit and they had to rebuild.
Yeah, we were very lucky geographically. We also stole a whole lot of land. We had resources that were essentially free that the rest of Europe and the rest of the world didn't really have. So there's a mythology about American innovation that isn't necessarily true. And I'm not discounting all the garage inventors, but
one thing we hired a bunch of ex-Nazis to come over here and.
Well, one thing though, too, remember though about Europeans, what you said about free resources. During the colonial period, they had lots of free resources because they basically ripped them off from Africa and China and India. So that's why sometimes with Europeans, I'm kind of like, yeah, you guys, we were swimming in wealth because you basically robbed the globe. Hell, United States. I mean, that's one thing too. When the British, talk about what was done to the Native Americans, and which was awful, but they were part of that. they got that all rolling.
Yeah, let's not talk about like you know, the Cape of Africa and the Boer Wars and Zulu wars. And
well, I mean, even they, you know, the Brits in the New World and you know, colonial America, I mean, they were like stripping trees out of the ground like it was nothing. I mean, you know, a lot of the timber from the colonies built British ships.
Yep.
I mean, there was tons of lumber that was going across the ocean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they were really good. They were really good around the world.
The British went conquering huge swaths of the globe to like acquire more tea, apparently. Like it was all in search of tea.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I guess, and
Dutch-
slaves, but mostly tea.
The Dutch East India Company actually conquered India and then gave it to the Queen as a present.
right.
Green tea, black tea, priority.
Humanity, no, none of that.
One thing real quick though too, we're talking before about hierarchy and stuff. One other thing too that it cuts both ways. Another reason why you end up with some level of hierarchy is experience. So like if my company, let's just say it was more organized, more democratically, it was more open thing, a flatter thing, I'm still the most experienced person in the company. So at a certain point, I mean, yes, certainly, you know, we should be open to new ideas and all this kind of stuff. But on the other hand, you can't discount large swaths of 35, 40 years of experience either. 35. So that's another big part of the equation that you end up with, you know, an imbalance right off the bat from there too.
Yeah, and I think anytime you work to specifically address equalizing outcomes versus equalizing opportunity, then you run into problems.
Right.
Like we're really, an ideal society is one that utilizes all the various skills that people have and doesn't offer people stupid make work that, you know, forces them to waste their life, you know, digging
And
holes or flipping burgers. And
resources.
I'm sorry?
Wastes a lot of resources too.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And yeah, no, I know the Star Trek future that allows everybody to kind of pursue the thing that they want to pursue, and use their gifts, you know, or their skills, their acquired knowledge in the most effective way possible. The problem is none of that stuff works very well with capitalism.
I'm unconvinced that people actually want to do that. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I mean,
UBI is a great way to start going in that direction. I mean, other countries do this, you know. Wow, look at that. What do we have?
oh,
Yeah, it's something I made. I've been working on a webcomic, and this is like relevant to what we've been talking about pretty hard. Because there are so many times I feel like the Phil character, where you're in the back of the room going, "I see the mistake, guys, the mistake over here," and everyone's like, "Shut up! We're not listening to you. We don't care what the mistake is. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing because we like, you know, being the kind of wrong we like being." Sort of thing. It was kind of like there was this thing I heard about in World War II. A bunch of bombers came back that were all shot up, and they were trying to figure out like where do we need to armor these planes, because, you know, obviously they're getting shot up, and so they look at where all the bullet holes are and they say, we got to patch this spot.
Right.
And like one dude at the back of the room was like, guys, these are the planes that came back. You need to armor the bits that weren't shot, because the planes that didn't come back were probably shot there. You know, it's like, but that's what it feels like sometimes to be at the back of the room going, guys, I see the flaw in the system. We're doing that, you know, and everyone's like, shut up. So, you know.
Yeah, I see the flaw in the system.
See, I think
it's like being a progressive these days.
I found a way to make UBI really work, because part of the problem, you know, right now, at least the proposals I've heard so far, and I'm not to say I've heard everything, the math doesn't really work out. But I thought of a way that could work. Basically, it has to mean that wealth is not heritable.
Yeah.
So if wealth is not heritable, then you could actually do it. And the idea being, you should not be able to inherit huge sums of wealth because you had nothing to do with it. You wasn't yours. So, and then whoever earned it, they earned it as part of the system, whatever system we end up with, so that, so basically, from when you're 18, so when you're 18, you're getting UBI and you're doing your stuff, or maybe from when you're born,
Joe,
I don't know.
I'd like to push back on that just a little bit
And
because
so would I.
one of the issues. Now, I agree, and I think that we used to do it. We had a pretty fair system where there was a tremendous wealth tax on heritable wealth, but intergenerational wealth is critical to the way humans develop. There's no, I mean, even if that heritable wealth is just knowledge, the way people pass down things to their children that help them out is critical to the way we develop as a civilization. So you cannot get rid of heritable wealth entirely. And I mean, I grew up in Oakland where I was living in a black neighborhood in West Oakland that at one time had been the Harlem of the West. And it was the Harlem of the West because of railroad fortunes. Black people could earn their living on the railroad and get a pension and buy a house. And they owned beautiful Victorian houses in this neighborhood. And the people in my neighborhood still own those houses 75 or 80 years later, because that was the only thing that could be handed down. Now, those houses were all crumbling, but it was some, sort of minimum standard. Without that, Oakland would have been even worse than it was growing up.
Yeah, I should have. I meant to exclude houses, but yeah, I agree with you, Jack.
There's more to it than that, though. I mean, people find loopholes in everything. And I'm sure there'll be something like, okay, I'm on my last legs. I'll start a joint account with my descendants, or I'll give them all of my money now. So when I die, they inherit all of zero, or whatever it is. But more than that, I mean, I got so frustrated watching Bernie at the debates when every time someone would say, how are you going to pay for it? He wouldn't answer, because there are so many ways we could pay for it. I mean, number one, we don't need all these wars we're in. If we bring all the troops home and the wars, unbloat the military, then we start seeing a whole bunch of extra capital to work with. Then go after big pharma and get them for the price gouging. And then
I'd rather do that almost in reverse order.
Hold on. There's more to this plan. Now that we're not in the Middle East and we're not taking all that oil, we start transitioning to a green economy. And solar basically ends up paying for itself. So there's that. And then we implement, the whole Medicare for all thing, and the pretty much everything is paid for at this point, because, if we reduce the military down to what we need and make sure it's for defense only, I mean, that covers almost everything all by itself, never mind big pharma. But when we go after them for the drug prices, we pay less with the Medicare for all. And I'm sure UBI's in there somewhere too.
Well, to your point about the military, real quick, I just want to get this about the military. Now, when at the end of the Bush term and the beginning of the Clinton term, there was a big drawdown in the military because the Cold War was basically over, and there was a drawdown, and everyone was talking about peace dividend. And then later on, people were like, "Oh, there was no peace dividend." And I'm like, "Yeah, there was. We actually had a balanced budget." And a lot of the prosperity that happened in the mid to late Clinton years was because a lot of, not one, the money was redirected to other things, but also even a lot of those sites were redirected. There was a lot of community development, and a lot of those former military bases were redeveloped for community use, whether some sort of economic benefit to the community. And so there was an enormous benefit, a peace benefit. But then people just pretended it didn't happen, and like,
I learned to skate.
Was there.
I don't know. I guess the whole idea of you can't inherit wealth. I definitely agree that this takes away from, like Jack was saying, it takes away from, family legacies, et cetera, which is a thing no matter who your family is. I mean, I have things that have been passed down to me. They might not be $1 million, but they still like carry some significance, right? But I think even more than that, that bothers me about that is that that wealth is someone's money that they got in a fair manner. Right. And by fair manner, I mean, if I walk up to any one of you and I give you $5 out of my wallet, we consider that a fair exchange because that was my $5. And I said, hey, have this $5. And I gave it to you. And that's good. Right. So because that was my money to make that decision.
Yeah, but
with.
Jeff Bezos didn't earn his money. I mean, I can point to a
Donald
million.
Trump
Well,
didn't
you
earn
haven't
his
earned
money.
you
Yeah,
haven't earned the
exactly.
$5 if I gave it to you. But it's still my money that I get to decide what I want to do with.
Yeah,
it.
but
That's the whole
There's
point.
a difference there.
Now, if you're going to tell me that I can't do whatever I want with my money, like give it to whoever I want, save it for my.
That's not what I said at all, Andy.
No, that's not you personally. But if that is the decision, right? Is that if you die, you don't have a right to give your money to your own family. That something else has to be done with it. Then why the hell are you waiting until I die? Why don't you just go ahead and dictate that to me in my living life and make me give away my money to something?
So sort of what I said.
Right, but that's
like, what are we waiting till death for?
Andy, once you die, you have no rights, though. You no longer have rights once you die.
But I can make a decision of what to do with my property while I'm alive, and that's where. Sure. So I can say that I want to will it to my family.
No,
I mean, the difference there is, did you steal that $5 that you gave me? And that's what we're really talking about, because Jeff Bezos is not earning the money he makes.
How far do we want to regress to get to that answer?
Define earn.
Well, that's the thing is if your model is to skim off of the labor value of people who are your employees and you're not actually putting in any new effort, like there's no argument that anybody can make to me that Jeff Bezos earned the vast majority of his fortune.
I still want a definition of earned, though. Yeah. What do you mean by earned?
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, there's a legitimate question as to whether there should be a limit, because honestly, listen to this, right? In the time it takes me to finish this sentence, Jeff Bezos just made $50,000.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to say there shouldn't be limits. I'm not going to say that there aren't bounds of reason. But at the same time, I mean, like I'm sure he does some paperwork. I'm sure he earns at least some of the money he makes, even if it's too much of it, even if he gets too much for the work he does.
Of course.
Yeah.
What Jeff Bezos has done. What Jeff Bezos has done in his life probably earned him a few houses, maybe a boat, a solidly upper middle class lifestyle is what the actual work he has done has earned.
Define actual work. But the person's brain power, ingenuity, does that not count at work?
None of us have worked less hard than Jeff Bezos. I am almost positive.
Right, but if I'm smart enough to work smarter, not harder physically, does that mean that I didn't work?
That's not, because Jeff Bezos is just stealing. He's stealing from his workers.
Well, here's what I would say. I would actually say, because he came up with an idea and set it up and did all that, that's probably worth. I don't regret somebody even a wealthy existence, but he's beyond a wealthy existence is having a few $1 million.
Okay, but I still want a definition of earn that distinguishes it from other methods of acquiring things. Because like if you are earning something, stealing something, surely there's a spectrum in between. Because okay, I'm earning money, and then all of a sudden my methods are no longer me earning, and I don't know how to define that.
Well, I think you're going.
Go ahead. I have
you're
some
going to
ideas
have to define that differently depending on ideology. And I admit that as somebody who is anti-capitalist, I don't see an ethical transition from, like, you can't have a system where your money is is earned by skimming off the top of the actual labor that people who work for you are doing. There's
Right.
a
He's stealing because he's not paying his employees what they earn, what they deserve.
Okay,
And
but
that's-
that statement, so that statement is only true relative to what we imagine is the most ideal possibility, right? So if everybody was earning, or if there was a total pool of money that was incoming, that still made everybody come out to be dirt poor, okay, then everybody would be dirt poor. And the problem is not that these things are happening. It's that there is a discrepancy in the relationship between how much he has and how much everybody else has. There is a gap there that is too wide. And if everybody was able to meet a certain minimum standard, right? The same way we think of minimum wage, this is the minimum amount, right? But we can see, right? The problem here is that we can see that this guy literally makes so much money that we could, like, if his money, even a portion of it was redistributed, everybody else's baseline for living would be raised automatically. And so to me, that implies that there is an artificial keeping down of that in order for him to collect more. And this is where
he's stealing.
Well, I don't know. That's not stealing.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
It is stealing.
Well,
If you're
wait a minute.
intentionally,
Now, it's
if
not.
you're
No,
intentionally,
I don't agree that it's stealing. Do I?
It's a
agree
progressive
that it is?
tax rate is all it is.
if
Yeah, I
you
don't
are
agree that
intentionally,
that's stealing.
if you are intentionally keeping the amount that you pay your employees, the people that depend on you,
The employees, the people that agreed to work for your company at the rate that they got hired on
at gunpoint.
at pretty much at gunpoint. I mean, people are working at those jobs at those wages have very few choices. It is
Capitalism
very
is
close to
coercion.
slave labor. It is way.
I just want to say that I ultimately I agree with the point. Okay, I just want to come out and say,
But let me finish. Then let me finish. Then let me finish. But then let me finish. If you agree with that point, then let me finish. That means that since you agree with that point, that he is artificially keeping, and not only him, others, but he's just the biggest one right now, keeping the amount that he pays out to his employees low so that he can profit. He is stealing from his employees. He is living off of their sweat.
So in good ways of
I disagree with that final statement.
Sloppy language. Because I would not define what Rob just described as stealing. That's not the word I would use for it. He's certainly being draconian and obnoxious, but no agreement has been breached. No one's stuff has been taken from them that they already have. So it's not stealing. I think that's the wrong word. It's just unethical.
Yeah, their time has been.
He's raised his minimum wage for everyone in his company to above $15 an hour, while the Democratic Party has been fighting for the fight for 15 for fucking ever. He has right now, his net worth is 10% of what all of the U.S. student loan debt is. If he actually makes it to 100% and then he turns around and pays off all our student debt because that's just his goal, what will you think about him then?
Well, it changed my
without him commanding all of this money in one centralized place, shit would never happen, because we try to make student debt not a thing. We try to have, free education in America. We're not doing it. He is single-handedly raising the standard of living of everyone in Denver, because all the jobs around here have to raise their wages above $15 an hour to get them to quit going over to his factory.
Right. And Mike, a couple of things. One, that's a fairly recent development. And two, if all people like him didn't hoard the wealth in the first place, the economy would actually grow faster, because that's the thing that I keep trying to tell to these ultra right wing, ultra capitals, or think they're capitalists, that capitalism works better when the wealth is well distributed, because basically you get value added on the labor. So the more money that's in the system, it builds on itself. So the reason why we actually have the economy has been slowing and doing worse is because the concentration of wealth is actually bad for capitalism.
But you can't say that.
It's totally bad for capitalism. I mean, who's going to buy the products if they don't have the money to do it?
And you can't put off the top of people's labor like he's not giving them what they're worth, because what they're worth is also relative to how many of them there are. If you have one person that knows how to use a hammer, and that is the only person that knows how to use that hammer, and they can do it the best and the rightest, their skill is at a premium price. But if you have 500,000 people that know how to use a hammer, that suddenly their skill is not valuable anymore.
You're talking about market demand is basically what it comes down to. Like supply and demand is what you're talking about. But I mean, the thing is, though, to what, because I've been wanting to say this for like a minute or two at least, to what Agent Adult was saying, it sounds very ends justify the means. It sounds very, look, we'll sacrifice a whole bunch of you irreparably to get to this point where it can become a paradise, because people are going to end up losing their livelihoods and maybe even their lives in the process of Jeff Bezos getting this money to pay off all the student loan debt. Like we kind of need the relief now instead of in some big lump sum later.
I want to think as well. I've been waiting to say this for ages. I think we're talking about the symptoms when we need to really address the problem, and there ought to be some way, probably via regulation, where you can have an established relationship between how much the people at the bottom make and how much the people at the top make. You could have a ratio which was established in law, and all companies had to abide by that ratio. So the people at the top, if they want to give themselves more money, they by law have to give the people at the bottom more money at the same time. Have to. What's wrong?
Japan. So, but basically a maximum wage law based on percentages in that company.
Japan had that for a period of time. I don't know what the period was, but it was only 10 times. The CEO of any company could only make 10 times what the lowest paid employee made. And of course, Japan is a much more collectivized society. They have a lot more of a tradition of sort of, the lords and the vassals actually have a responsibility to each other, not just one as a hierarchical, over the other. And it did have some consequences. I mean, there's the discussion of like the lost decade, the 1990s, where Japan went into a decade-long recession that was very difficult for them to recover from. And of course, the capitalist model, the American capitalist model, is that, well, if you had just fired employees, and kept wages low, then you would have gotten out of that recession quicker. Now, there's a lot of pushback on that too. But you definitely have slower growth if you have some kind of restricted maximum or a percentage between the two. Now, here's the thing. I think capitalism puts growth at such a high sort of position incorrectly. I don't think growth is so important. I don't think we can have a system that is based in infinite exponential growth.
It's not sustainable.
It's completely unsustainable. So, like, people should recognize that the loss of growth or the speed of growth is the consequence to a more fair society. But is that a bad thing? Is the main question that
as I understand it, it's actually like illegal for a public company, at least, to not do what they can to maximize profits in the shortest amount of time. That you're actually not allowed legally to look like 6 moves ahead on the board. And I'm thinking that's step one to change that shit.
Yeah, that's
there's a fiduciary responsibility.
But the thing is that it's a little overblown because you do also have a responsibility to the long-term survival of the company too. Because obviously, if the asset goes bust, then the share, then the asset's worth nothing, and people lose their investment. The thing is that it's at a certain. It really comes down to is okay. Of the profit, once you pay, leaving wages out for a second, and once you pay for everything, you pay for the lights, you pay for the shipping, you pay for the cost of goods sold. When you look at what's left, when you look at okay, what percentage is the person at the top taking of all that relative to the people around him? And again, obviously, I'm totally fine with the idea of people with more valuable experience. Someone like in my case, we're engineering, so clearly an engineer is going to make more than the person who sweeps up because the person who doing engineering is producing more of the valuable asset. But at a certain point, if you're like someone to get the kind of wealth that Jeff Bezos is, that means he's taking such a ridiculous percentage. I don't care, he can pay them $20 an hour. If he's still earning $50,000 a minute, there's a certain point where his contribution and his value that he's adding is way out of balance to what the contribution, because that means because the people who are working on the bottom, and the bigger the organization gets, the more this is the case, that the percentage of the result is due to the other people and not the person or people at the top. It's different. Right. It's a lot different on a smaller scale. When you have a company with 2, 3, 4 people, you might really have that one person is doing, the most of the value-added work, and then the people there are just facilitators. That's possible. But when you get to a company that's, tens of thousands of people, that one person at the top or a group of people in the board, they can't possibly be contributing that high a percentage if they're walking away with 90% of the profit pre-wages.
So,
okay, well, the thing about that is though, that I say this about theists all the time, is if you can share and play nicely with the other kids, I don't give a damn what you do. So if it turns out that Jeff Bezos does end up becoming the world's first trillionaire, but everyone else's life is perfectly comfortable, I don't give a toss. It's that bar of everyone else's life is comfortable that has to be crossed first, and he's not even trying, or at least it looks like he isn't.
So how do we second concern as part of our net worth if his actual pay from the company is only $81,000?
Yeah, I was going to say his net worth versus what he actually has in what would you call it? Expendable is the word that wants to come to mind, but it's not. It's liquid. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. That he could really is hugely different.
Well, the thing is, too, you can't just look at his paycheck because also if he's getting paid in stock, then that's also compensation.
I don't think that some of these people's actual money or even net worth, I'm not even convinced that it is that's the problem, that they are somehow being dishonest. I think that something that compounds the situation is that they then, once they get to a point where they can do things like begin to hire people that are experts in economics and shuffling money around, that you start encountering things where you can put your money and you can put your holdings and your assets into, you can open things in other countries where they don't have, say, certain tax restrictions, or where you're getting compound interest on stuff. And it just completely exasperates the issue, right? Because
you're touching on the real problem with
right,
wealth.
like that is to me the real problem is that there's like a whole system that they can then gain upon that just blows what would be normal out of the water.
Because the power that Bezos has is not earned. That's the thing. There's a difference. Like,
fine, earned, for fuck's sake.
We can go into a lot of detail about what earned means, but it's a very complicated question. Like, I'm not going to give you a one sentence definition for what earned is.
I guess my point really is that it seems a moving target, and two, a matter of opinion. So, I mean, that's why I'm asking you to define it. Like if you were to make an argument that Jeff Bezos hasn't earned what he has, I want to know what you mean so I can react to it properly.
Okay,
But
so
there's different kinds of earn, right? There's different kinds of acquire, and not all acquiring is through what we might even say the classic definitions of earning, right? Like I can acquire things fair and square that I didn't directly earn. Because
Right.
like with the dollar bill example, if I come up to you, if somebody comes to me and gives me $1, I've acquired $1, but did I earn the dollar? Right. And so, but I think
What is Spanky down there meaning when he says it?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jack. I do have some idea though. Like I do have some ways that I would at least begin to classify what I mean when I say earn something. So, but I'll let Jack go. I just,
I mean, there's ways that a person can earn power through, organizing.
That's a very different idea, though.
Yeah, I'm asking about money here, which I realize is a kind of power, but it's also a specific kind of power.
I'm super interested in talking about the power idea because I'm like, that's dynamic.
Through this entire conversation, everyone is using earned and made interchangeably. And they're not the same thing. I mean, I would say, yeah, Jeff Bezos made lots and lots of money, but he didn't earn that money. But yes, he made that money, but he definitely didn't earn it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing though, is if someone made a bunch of money, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not theirs.
That doesn't matter. If you
whoa, I think it's going to matter to a lot of people.
Stop just a second. Let me
absolutely. If I mug you, your money becomes mine.
Let me just say something real quick. If you earned a bunch of money with your cotton field that is worked by slaves, that is theft.
As a descendant of people that work those cotton fields, I agree.
The question is, can you explain? So I agree with you, Jack. But so the question is, can you explain why that is theft? Because I think that understanding why that is theft is critical to the definition that Kate is asking for what does earned mean.
Remember that slavery was legal. Just because you acquired it legally does not make it not theft. And I mean,
Where are you getting your standard?
My standard is really an ethical standard, not a legal standard.
Yeah, but
what's its source is my question.
So it's Lockean philosophy. Actually, it derives from Lockean philosophy, the idea of what constitutes property and ownership. And the reason that it is theft, I'm just about to go into this real quick for you. But the reason that we would consider that theft,
I'm kind of wondering about his though.
But I mean, I feel like I'm just like going a layer deeper on what he's saying.
But I mean, I'm trying to understand this anarcho, whatever the heck it is he's talking about, system he's talking about. So I want to know.
Let me just go for a real simple example. One of the largest companies in America, Ocean Spray Cranberry Company, is a worker-owned co-op. That means that all of the profits, after they've paid their taxes, after they've paid their light bills, are spread between the employees through a democratic process. It would be everybody who is a part of that company has some say in how that money is spent. And people can negotiate as a democratic process who earns how much based on experience, all those other things. You can easily,
I think you misunderstood my question.
You can easily say that anybody at Ocean Spray has earned their living. I mean,
why though?
Well, part of why is because it's that principle of non-aggression. If you're swinging your fist and you hit somebody in the nose, which is what Jeff Bezos is doing to all of his employees.
Let me try this another way. Why your system and not someone else's?
Well, at the very base level of it, we like things fair on a genetic level, as great apes, we are very aware of fairness. And if you want to go to like what feels fair or what makes us believe something is fair, like you kind of have to go into our genetic predisposition towards fairness, you know, and that is, you know, that's a long conversation.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that eventually there will be someone who arises as an authoritarian figure. Like you have to arbitrate.
So go ahead. I'll let Joe speak.
Well, one thing I was going to say, I want to get, I mean, whether or not Kate and Jack come to an understanding, I don't care. But the one thing, you know, we talk about the maid and earn. Now, Amy had mentioned like somebody putting money into financial vehicles and making money. So I don't even have a problem with that. If you invest money and you expect a return on investment, whether it's passbook savings, which doesn't pay very much anymore. I remember when it was 5%, because I'm old. You know, if you put money into something, you're basically loaning somebody some money, and then they're giving you hopefully more back than you put in. Zero issue with that. But there's a difference, and I would call that earned, because again, you took a risk and you won that risk. You were basically, so you handed somebody money and they handed you back. Now, how they got their money, that may be another matter. Because if they're basically giving me the money because they, you talked before, Amy, about that gap, that disparity between the top and the bottom, at a certain point, that does become like usury. So basically, if there's that much profit to go around, and the people who actually made the product and helped sell the product aren't getting a piece of that, that's why it's theft, and that's why slavery is theft. Because if I'm working for you and I'm getting little to nothing out of what I'm doing, and in the case of slavery, I'm forced to do it, whether it's legal or not, you're still stealing from me. My labor has a certain value to it. I produce whether I'm producing a product, that's easy to quantify. If I produce a product and that product is sold, then it's very easy to quantify the value of my labor. If I'm a facilitator, I don't directly produce product, but I'm making it possible for other people to do so, then I'm contributing to the value. So part of what they've done, I've contributed to the value of that labor. And there are people, actuaries, none of us is an actuary, so none of us are going to be able to calculate that, but it can be done. So, you know, so the whole point is when that person, and now the whole model that we live under here in the United States, for the most part, is predicated on the idea that a worker is giving up some portion of that value of the labor, so that they're getting security, they're getting reduced responsibility, and then they don't have to go 17 weeks without a paycheck. But there does come a point where the amount of labor that's being sacrificed is inequitable. And it's not a hard line. You're not going to come up with a hard line. And what Kate said before, yes, there's between one extreme and the other, there's a gradient. Where the gradient is, I don't know. I'm not an actuary, neither are you, neither are one of us. But it exists. It has to, because the other, there's a gradient. There has to be a gradient between them.
In response to what Deep Ashtray said in the comments, yeah, correct. There are no jobs on a dead planet.
The only thing that I wanted to say at all was that until we started not deciding whose turn it was to talk, because Zoom hadn't moved except for blinking in like 15 minutes, and it was starting to creep me out, is what I wanted to say.
So Jeff Bezos makes a lot of money. His employees make better than the average money around in every city where his plants are. And we all get cheap products. That meets all of Kate's criteria there, but I still think he's stealing from the environment, because Misty, my girlfriend, she has an Amazon Plus account, orders stuff all the time. We have boxes upon boxes from Amazon, right? And that is hurting the environment in a way that's an externality. Everyone on the planet has to pay for that.
Right.
And he's using cardboard boxes left and right? Horribly ruining the environment. Let's not even talk about the gas burned in delivering all these boxes, right?
And the airbags
So
the airbags that are plastic and all that, the extra cardboard boxes. But have you ever gotten a box in a box in a box?
Yes.
I have.
yeah, it's happened. So my question is, what's the alternative? I mean, because and I'm not trying to be snarky about it, but I mean, if we were to brainstorm for alternatives,
Burn them all down.
I mean, I suppose we wouldn't have to actually, like, I guess every item could be open, individual, out.
Every item could be
I mean,
more gently
there's,
delivered,
like,
not
other
by
ways to do it, I suppose.
NFLPS.
But I mean, it seems like eventually the delivery would get difficult somehow. I don't know. I mean,
So-
I'm not sure how they would work that.
I mean, drones. I mean, I'm just saying that the reason they do that is because of the danger and the damage of delivering a product a lot of times. Not all the time, because I've definitely gotten books within boxes that the book is this big and the box is, yay big. But part of the reason that they do that with a lot of things is because the potential damage, and because I don't know about you guys, but I'm telling you, not USPS, but every postal delivery system, fuck it, like all of them, UPS, FedEx, like they all will like crush your stuff. It's like they go for a go long in the factory. It's like, go look, this one's for you.
I can actually speak about that because I've worked in Amazon's warehouses before, and I guarantee you that's not what happens.
I don't believe it. I think that they're just back there, just like, I don't know, having a grape crushing dance on top of some of people's orders, right?
That would have been an absolute blast.
If they were gently delivered by drone, so that you didn't have to worry, because what happens if something gets damaged along the way? Since Amazon has that whole money back guarantee, right? If they don't go to the extra effort to protect that product, suddenly there's a whole line of this customer's thing. The corner of it had the paint chipped, and now they want 100% refund and things and stuff. And then it's a whole rigmarole, right? That ends up costing probably far more money than it ever did to just put it in an extra big box.
Well, here's one thing.
The green machine there in the chat was they give us the wrist computer. We go from shelf to shelf, zap, 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 put them in the cart, bring them up to the poor fuckers on the conveyor belt. That's basically how it worked. I mean, I could get more involved because it was actually a lot of fun, but never mind.
Well, here's one other thing too, and this is something that hasn't come up, but part of that equation, and certainly the Amazon the boxes is an issue. The part of it is us as a society, because as far as deliveries, okay, how could they do deliveries better? Well, a more efficient way would be like if you buy a lot from Amazon, if they said, well, we're not going to send you everything within 2 days, we're going to give you no more than one delivery a week, and we're going to send all your shit in a more efficiently boxed package, so that you're going to have, means you're going to be delayed gratification. You're not going to get everything right away, but you're going to get it. And it's not going to use as much packing material. It's not going to, it's not as many trips to deliver to you.
Okay, no, and I'll tell you why not. Okay, we are in the middle of a pandemic right now, and there are some places that are almost impossible to get to and still socially distanced that sell things I absolutely need. So, I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, I can't get the cat food today, and I'm going to run out tomorrow, better get some sort of next day delivery thing going on. So, I mean, there are times where it's like a weekly boom swag dump just isn't going to cut it.
I think we're forgetting that all of this is a very new phenomenon that, for hundreds of millions of years, we did not have any of this.
Yeah, and we also died at age 33. I don't want to go back to then.
Well, sorry, Joe. I just want to say I kind of object to automated world where like you can't get through to a real person on the telephone and lots of different things. For example, and even if you can, I don't know. It's just these days it's more all the automation is more convenient for them. It has nothing to do with customer service convenience at all. It just cuts their costs, and that's what it's all about.
Just imagine if they defunded. Just imagine if they defunded the cardboard boxes and all of that terrible delivery, automated it, and then then populated the customer service centers with actual more people that could get things done for you. So you could get rid of customer service automation, but then you would ramp up the automation in the actual delivery service. That way, those people can be assigned different roles.
You want to know how you can create a double wide buttload of new jobs in this country? Make it illegal for the call centers to not be in the continental U.S. Imagine the jobs we create. Yes, it means they'd have to pay a buttload more in wages, but fuck them, they can soak it. I mean, they won't feel it. I think that would be some of the best legislation we could get.
Well,
you know,
I'm with you, Kate, because especially because when I'm calling, usually it's like tech support for some technical thing that, you know, and when I call somebody who is not fluent in the language that I'm speaking and is not necessarily fluent in the product that I'm calling about, and I'm sitting there thinking, I know more about this fucking product than you do. Why am I talking to you? You know, and that drives me. I mean, and again, and in my case, you know, on some of these support contracts, I'm paying, you know, for some of them, I'm paying a support contract anywhere between $2,500 and $16,000 a year for that support contract. And when they slough me off to parts unknown, and again, I don't care. I don't begrudge somebody in a foreign country a job. If you can do the job and I can communicate with you, I don't give a fuck. But the fact that that's not what they do, because they also don't train that person. They don't spend any money on getting somebody who's fluent in the language and fluent in the product because they don't want to spend the money on it. Then I get that gets me irate. So I'm with you. Like get the jobs back here.
Really quick, and I do mean really. I have a Japanese lesson coming up in 10 minutes, so I kind of gotta go.
Okay.
All right. Have fun.
Bye. Going back real quick to something that was said earlier about I'm a big proponent of worker-owned co-ops. If Amazon was run the way Ocean Spray was run, the lowest paid employees at Amazon would make $107,000 a year.
Okay.
So just think about that when we're talking about how wonderful $15 an hour is.
Right. And imagine, and that being the case, imagine what that would do for the economy.
$15 an hour is still shit money. It's nothing. It's garbage.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I don't know. I live in New Jersey. For $15 an hour, you can't get a studio apartment on $15 an hour. You can work 80 hours a week at $15 an hour and not be able to afford an apartment. That's just the reality of this entire state. You cannot.
That's because it hasn't kept up with productivity.
You know.
Yeah, you know, there's what's his name again? You know, oh, you're socialist. Like, yeah, I'm a capitalist. How many enterprises have you started? None, right? Yeah, shut up. Also want to address something Curious said earlier. You say, oh, you socialists pay your taxes. Yeah, we're all for people paying their taxes. So I think that's kind of comical. And I would bet, Curious, on my better years, I've paid more taxes than you've ever earned. So in a year. So.
Yeah.
I've said this before. I've said this before, but I'm a real massive supporter of the socialist style tax codes that we had in like the 1950s.
Yeah. Under Republican Dwight Eisenhower.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm a fan of. I am a fan of the 1950s American socialism. We need to go back to that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, you know, to what we've said about how to get, you know, the equitable distribution. That is how we had a more equitable distribution, is because the upper tax rates were so high. There was really no value in hoarding the wealth because you weren't going to get most of it. So the idea is you say, okay, I'll distribute this more evenly with my workforce, or I'll put money in investing in my business. And I'll tell you, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I was at a customer today. I got a service call. The place is a fucking shithole. Okay. The stuff is like 15 years out of date, and everything's, you know, spit tape and baling wire. And this is, you know, this is why, again, I laugh at, you know, running government like a business. I would sure as hell wouldn't want my government run like this fucking business is. And why? Because it's that instant gratification that, you know, today's profits and fuck tomorrow. And so I was talking to one of the supervisors. For the amount that they spent in emergency service calls with us last year, we could have replaced a whole system with money to spare. So, and if they had done that, the system would be running, and they wouldn't have to call us. They wouldn't have the downtime. They wouldn't have all the problems. But it's short-sighted.
Well, everyone's pointing at me. I'm not totally.
Just want to make sure you're
why.
okay.
I mean, oh yeah, I'm okay. I mean, earlier I wanted to say that when it comes to packaging and such, cardboard isn't as much of a problem as the plastics that they use. You know, because cardboard, I mean, it's a renewable resource to at least a degree. And then someone else had mentioned, I think it was Sister Danger mentioned the drones delivering things, but that only works. I mean, that only works on a more local level. You can't have drones delivering across the country. So there's still going to be the problem of shipping.
It's only
Hold on.
2040. You know what I mean?
Self-driving cars, my friend.
People would be
I
shooting.
wanted to ask the group a question. I mean, I kind of have come to the conclusion that there's a relationship between the disparity between the very, very wealthy and the average working people, and the rise of far-right extremism. Because that happens not just in America, it happens in other countries as well. So I think you can draw that relationship. But I don't think it's an obvious one. And I think, but bottom line is lots of people are doing really, really stupidly well. Lots of other people are really, really struggling. And the people doing well say, oh, it's those people over there. And they'll point to immigrants or whatever
That's what I was going to say. They demonize
voices in that culture. You know,
they demonize the other. And these days, the other isn't just like people of color. The other is Democrats or leftists or socialists. The socialists are coming to get you, or the Democrats. I mean, like, especially very, very, very recently. I mean, that is the mantra of the right. I mean, even on the local level here, we had a freeholder in a meeting say the Democrats want to close the whole country, which is absolute nonsense. It's ridiculous. And then you have, Trump tweeting and retweeting things about, the Democrats want to destroy the country. The only good Democrat is a dead Democrat. And that's not something he actually retweeted. Yeah, I mean, so they bake this to people who are feeling othered already, people who are feeling that their voice isn't as strong as it used to be because certain segments of society or culture has moved on without them, are easily manipulated to do things like these yahoos who wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan.
Well, and to that point, I mean, and the irony of that is that the people that are these right wingers, they're voting for the very people that are putting in policies that make their oppression possible.
Right. We're going back to Thomas Frank with "What's the Matter with Kansas?"
Right.
Where you have generations of people voting against their own best interests. And I mean, I think it's a more complicated question about why people, because most of these people don't believe that they're voting against their own best interests. And so part of what we're talking about is charismatic leadership, which was earlier in the conversation, that people can be convinced of things over time that aren't, I mean, we already have plenty of irrational beliefs that people can be convinced of. I think that the idea that Jeff Bezos earned his fortune is an irrational belief we've been convinced with. But
well,
go ahead.
Well, there's one other, as you were saying it reminded me of one other thing too. The one other aspect is, again, we talked about not just charismatic leadership, but also it's that whole idea of the imagery of the individual. And really what it comes down to, I thought about why did the right wing like Reagan? Why did they like, either Bush, particularly the second Bush? Why they like Trump? Is because those people make the people on the bottom feel good about themselves, feel good about America. Because because here, we're on the left. What we're trying to do, we're trying to make America better. So we're constantly looking at things, and we're looking at the bullshit history that we were taught growing up, and say, oh wow, we were taught a lot of lies. There was, there was good stuff, but there was also a lot of bad stuff, and we have to own that. We can't move forward unless we own the errors of the past and try to make changes. But see, people in the right wing, they see that and like, oh, you hate America, you're attacking America. No, I love America, and I want to fix the problems in America. And I think Bill Clinton, one of the things that I always remember him, fix what's wrong with America with what's right in America. So it's not, but they see us as we're America loathing because we dare to admit that America made mistakes in its long history. So for them, Trump just stokes a thing into, hey, we're America, and America's great, and America never does anything wrong, and America never has to apologize. And they love that because then they feel good because that's all their identity, because they don't have anything else.
Well, I mean, I just know when I was in high school, and I'm 47, they were definitely teaching about the bad things that this country did. But we do have to teach the good things about this country as well. And there are some people who are pushing that we shouldn't even teach the good things.
I think
I think you're way more charitable than I would be, serious.
Good and bad. I think that it's difficult to talk reverentially about someone who owned people.
I mean, even like, yes, they do teach some of the bad stuff in school, but even that is kind of whitewashed. It's watered down. I mean, they don't teach how the military, the United States military in the 1950s sterilized women in Puerto Rico. That's not something you learn in school, but it is something that we did.
And nobody wants to talk about
like in
ICE sterilizing
2020, tearing out people, giving them involuntary hysterectomies. Oh shit, it hasn't changed that much in 60 years, has it? Is it 70?
Right.
70.
70 years, yeah, 70.
I can math.
I mean, the United States has been a tremendous force for good all over the world, and obviously, especially in this hemisphere. A tremendous force for good, lifted millions and millions and millions of people out of poverty. We have fed the world. We have done, there's no denying any of that. We have been equally horrid, equally horrible, equally oppressive, equally murderous. I mean, for every great thing you can say about America, you can say something equally awful. And that therein lies the problem. And a lot of people, like Trump's crowd, they want to put blinders on to the bad stuff. And they think that makes them patriots.
Well, because they don't want their lifestyle to change. They think of all of their lifestyle. I think everybody has some core where they know that some aspect of the American lifestyle is based in the oppression of other people. It's something that nobody really talks about. But if you face it head on, then maybe your lifestyle has to change in some way, and that's really scary, and that's really frustrating.
I think that is one of the things that's been going. So my thought here is that really the sort of people that we are talking about, because we're talking about basically this group of society that generally does not do much, but in an extreme situation, they are the most easy to radicalize and then move towards a cause, right? So we're talking about whatever this demographic is. And things that I see as common traits here are lack of education and understanding of true understanding of what fundamentally underlies whatever moral system they're currently operating on, and I actually think that's true of most of our society all the time, but some people still understand where the morality that we are generally given, as an operating basis for our society, they can still understand a little bit where it comes from. But I think that they have very little understanding of that. And then I think that is combined with what Jack was saying, which is it's the devil, So their life might not be good. It might not be great, but they know that. And to change to anything else, even if it's better, is an unknown success. Like that, we don't know that it will succeed. where we only are told that it's supposed to succeed. But I have managed to make this workable. So now I'm putting what I know to be workable on the line with something, and unless you can show to them that their ROI is going to turn them into freaking Bill Gates level of wealth or something, they might not consider that a trade worth risking, right?
Right. Well, they've also been lied to. It's not just that they don't want to go to the devil they don't know. It's that they've been made promises in the past. And one of my biggest complaints about the Democrats is that the Democrats have made promises. I mean, Bill Clinton made lots of promises.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
At I think it's hilarious that Barbara Ehrenreich wrote her book Nickel and Dimed during the Clinton boom. That book was very critical of the way lowest class labor is it benefits in this country. So people who have been lied to by Clinton and then lied to by Bush and then lied to by Obama, maybe they believe in the charismatic salesman, that is Trump. And I believed in the charismatic salesman of Obama at one point, but there is a cumulative effect where you realize that the promises of a better life do continue to be just promises. And so it does become a little easier to just stay where you're at and comfortable, even if it's bad, because
burn it all down.
Well, yeah, Jack, I agree with what you said, but also part of that, and this is also a part of the strategy of the right wing, is the fact that people don't have a fundamental understanding of how, functionally, of how government actually works and what it takes to actually change these various things. So, and I've said this before, this idea.
Yeah, but God, you can't these days anymore. Holy
people,
smoke!
People look at, they say, well, a politician promised them X, and that politician may try to get X. Like the way I said, I said before, like if just say Bernie Sanders was the nominee, just say Bernie Sanders won, whether in 2016 or now, just say that happened. I have zero doubt that Bernie is 100% sincere that he will intend to make all of those things happen. I have zero doubt whatsoever. And the reality is he wouldn't be able to, because that's functionally the way the government's built. And I'm not even talking about the backroom deals and all the corruption bullshit. I'm just talking, just because you live in a pluralistic society where everyone doesn't agree and you have an opposition party that is not for what you're talking about, you're literally never going to get all those things. And my biggest concern about Bernie wasn't whether or not what he would do, because I think he would do good things, but it was more of it would some of his dissolution supporters seeing the result and not seeing the effort, thinking, oh, Bernie lied to me, he didn't give me X, he promised X, Y, Z, he only gave me X and Y. Not understanding that there's more to the process than just that.
Yeah,
and
I think there's something.
Go ahead, Jack.
I think that there's something that isn't being taken into account there, which is that Bernie, one of his very best attributes is his ability to motivate people to be a stump speaker. I mean, the Bernie sort of like, yes, it's very boiled down to its simplest level, but that's something that Obama wasn't competent at. As wonderful and eloquent as Obama was at giving public speaking, he did not use the bully pulpit very well. And Bernie Sanders would certainly be more of a, speak to the people directly, use the bully pulpit, get people on board, really motivate people to push their Congress people to get things done. Now, that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders would have been 100% effective, but right. I have no doubt that his style, people make this comparison all the time that Trump and Bernie Sanders are similar in some ways, and lots of people get offended by that. But one of the things that they both have that make the comparison possible is that they go and speak directly to people. Bernie doesn't have the deep inborn spite that Trump has, but that is a power to motivate people. And if you're not a narcissist and you're not just looking to improve your own situation like Trump is, then you can use that to really force the hand of Congress really fast. I mean, we saw it with FDR. And that's really the thing that I think sets him apart. Again, I don't think he would have accomplished everything he wanted to, but he could have done more.
Okay. So a couple of things. I don't know if the Ask a Conservative Brock Lawley account there, if it's an actual person or if it's some kind of like a meme generating bot. Because his comments they bear no relationship to our conversation. When we're bad mouthing politicians, he's talking about how look at they're so condescending to the average American. Clinton is not the average American. So let's just get that out.
He might have been talking about. Well, he might have been talking about what I said when I said about people not understanding the function of government, and that's true. Left, right, and center. Most people do not know how the laws get passed, how things go through committee, and the whole. I mean, run into people constantly, and the ignorance it hurts me because that's part of the reason why we don't get what we want.
I waited a long time. I built up a bunch of stuff. I waited a long time. So yes, like people don't understand, or they're lied to and they believe it. The guy that I'm running against, the incumbent, 6 years ago ran on a platform of lowering taxes, right? He did absolutely nothing after he won 6 years ago. He did absolutely nothing to make those promises a reality. Nothing. And then 3 years ago, he ran on the exact same promises and was reelected on those promises and still has done nothing to make. There's no resolutions. There's nothing. The only time you hear about it is when he's running for election. And that happens a lot with politicians. And people, I like the way that sounds. I'm voting for you. So anyway,
channeling my inner Brock Lawley, I think what he'd like to say to you right now is you think that you're better than everybody else, but if you would just stop drinking pumpkin spice lattes and stop eating avocado toast and maybe do a little tax fraud, you could be a millionaire too, just like Trump.
I don't like any of those things, though. I don't do any of those things. The thing is, I think it's kind of hilarious, though, because basically, and this is a right-wing issue. If the idea of saying you're ignorant of something is an attack or saying you're better, everyone's ignorant of something. I'm ignorant of a whole panoply of things, but I'm not ignorant into the technical function of how the government works. So to say that a lot of people are ignorant is fact, and it's not condescending. There's probably things that Brock knows that I don't. Probably very few, but I'm sure they exist.
I've been a little contrarian.
I love the uneducated,
but I'm taking the Brock position and I'm failing miserably at it. But the same thing that you said about Bernie and how he could not get things done because there's the other party that would be opposition. Trump said he would repeal the ACA, and he was unable to do it because a new Congress came in and blocked it. Right? He promised that he would do that. He tried his hardest. It came down to McCain's vote betraying him. And that was a very sweaty palm moment for all of us, right?
Yeah.
He's still trying right now.
One difference. Yeah, there is one major difference.
Paul's original question was, are we too individual to be governed? And my reading of history is that was the whole fucking point. Our founding fathers got together and created a system of government with checks and balances that would never work. They went home thinking, yeah, this will never fucking work. We're never going to have a king. We're never going to have a president that's too powerful. It's going to be so gridlocked that we're never going to get anything done. We're all going to be able to live in peace because everybody trying to take power is going to be checked and balanced into oblivion, right? The problem is we have parties that can actually take over large parts of this checks and balance system and work together, right? That's the problem. as far as what the founding fathers' vision was. Their vision was that we would be too individual to govern.
The one thing I have to say about Trump trying to end the ACA and not being able to do it, there's a big difference between wanting to do something that is deeply unpopular, even if people hate the term Obamacare and they think they hate healthcare because it's called Obamacare. Those people still want healthcare, and so the fact that 70% of all Americans, it's more or less depending on the year, of all Americans want universal single payer health care. It's a lot easier to get the entire population, or a large chunk of the population behind you to push Congress for something that everybody, or mostly everybody, actually already wants.
It's easier, but I point out, like, the renewal of the assault weapon ban. I remember when that came up back when Bush 2 was president, and like 80% of the population was for it, including 70% of NRA members, and we still didn't get it.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I always come back to that 2014 Princeton study saying that America is actually an oligarchy. Because that is the case. And this is why I'm so against, Jeff Bezos having all that money, is because that's unearned power that the NRA and various other interest groups have, that somebody with a lot of money can overwhelm the interests of 75-85% of all Americans. It's a fundamental breaking of the game if you're talking about money. It's why you really can't have a free and fair society that has billionaires in it, certainly not trillionaires. I'm very hopeful.
And as I said, it's actually bad for capitalism. So anyone who's wants to wank off capitalism, Brock, what that concentration of wealth is bad for capitalism. See, that's the thing. I'm not anti-capitalist. I want to save capitalism from people who have gamed the system.
I think
unregulated capitalism sucks. Sorry, Kazum, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a feeling that what Ask a Conservative is saying, that we're being condescending, is our attitudes towards conservatives in general. But the thing is, a lot of conservatives view it's kind of like anyone to the right, some people on the far left, anyone to the right of Bernie Sanders some people consider a fascist, and then to the ultra conservatives, anyone to the left of Biden, they consider a communist. So it's like,
I don't even think they know what those words mean.
This condescending attitude comes from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of polls on CNN this week about who's supporting Trump and who's not. He's got women with a degree. He's got women without a degree. He's got men. Biden has women with a degree or women without a degree. He has all the minority groups. He has a better percentage. The only group that Trump wins at is white men without a degree. Right? There is some truth to us being condescending here, and that's because we see that people who are uneducated are voting against their own self-interests, not even understanding it.
I mean, I just want to go on the record as saying that I'm pretty sure I sound condescending towards most people, like, all the time. It isn't limited to the conversation of politics. So I'm pretty sure that's just basically how I always sound. So.
Yeah, I think it's a problem anytime people define other people by their political leanings. I have friends who are Republicans and conservatives, and I don't think bad things about them for being those things. It's non-consequential.
You think it's bad to judge people based on their political leanings?
I think it's bad. No, not to judge. No, not to judge. To define them. say, "Oh, I'm a conservative," and then all of a sudden that's all that person is a conservative. There's nothing wrong with being a conservative. Being a true conservative, an actual conservative, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I suppose that depends, though, on what kind of what part of conservatism you're talking about. Because
But for instance, like Donald Trump, for instance, is not a conservative.
No, he's not.
By any definition, he's not a conservative. There's nothing about him that's conservative. Nothing about his beliefs. There's
Well,
nothing about
except for
anything
his
he
whole, the people
That's
that
all
he's
salesman-
appointing to SCOTUS.
That's all salesmanship. That's all
You know,
salesmanship.
Is it salesmanship, or is it as you do, so you are? I mean,
No, because he doesn't.
you can't turn around, slap your wife, and say you're not a wife beater.
The difference he is selling an image. He doesn't have any core values. He doesn't have core values. He doesn't have there is no
core value.
core values. I mean, he just doesn't have any core values.
I'm pretty sure he's his own core value.
Trump is a showman. I mean, he's doing and saying things that he thinks are going to appeal to certain people in order to keep him in power or to give him more power. That's what he does. That's his entire game. John McCain was a conservative. I would have been perfectly happy with the John McCain presidency. I mean,
I guess
happy, but I mean, it's.
I mean, the point I'm getting at, though, is that there's different arenas in which conservative ideas apply, right? So you have people who are fiscal conservatives, right? And then you have people that are social conservatives, and so and those things, they're different areas of conservatism. Is all I'm saying. So.
Here's one thing. I just want to address what Brock just said. He said, "So glad you guys think 50% of the country is immoral." Brock, so do you.
I love it, like you guys are so condescending, but Trump
and he's directly
Whoa. I have to push back. What makes you, Brock, or anybody think that conservatives are 50%? They're not.
They're not. Yeah, I mean, it also directly contradicts what I said. I mean, it's like a direct contradiction to the point I was making, which is you shouldn't judge people that way. But then again, we're talking about Brock. I mean, he can't think his way out of a bag. So.
Well, look.
What do you think the percentages actually are? What do you think the percentages actually are? If it's not close to 50%, what do you think? How many people do you think are actually conservative? All right.
I think there's a good
that's based on attitude. That's based on attitude studies that have been done for years and years.
Okay. One of the clearest issues I can think of where there's a conservative liberal discrepancy is on abortion, and 74% of Americans favor the right to choose. Maybe not all of those people are liberal, fair enough. Maybe some of those people who are conservative and are enlightened enough to realize that the right to choose is actually a conservative value as well. You know,
Paul, here's the thing. I agree with your position on a woman's right to choose. I agree with that. But you heard what you said, and I think this is the kind of thing that Brock is talking about. You said that a certain percentage of the people are enlightened enough to agree with you. So that right there,
that's pretty condescending.
It's condescending. And you're immediately saying that the people who don't agree with you are not enlightened.
What's funny though is that those same people who are bitching about how this is condescending are the exact same people who say things like, if something can be destroyed by the truth, it should be. Right? So you want to talk like you literally are like you guys are condescending. Have you noticed who's the president for the past 40 years?
And the funny thing is,
he makes fun of people who that is half of his platform is mocking people.
Brock said yes, and I don't know, because there's a bit of a lag. I don't know what he's saying yes to. Brock, was I correct? Did I get that right? Just blink twice.
Well, if it's about condescension, there are two sides that both have a little bit of anti-science bias to them. One side has a lot more than the other. Right? When you look at the party who just today had a rally on the White House lawn, which is a known COVID hotspot right now, with the commander in chief having it, and they're all standing beneath him, just collecting his spittle, with no social distancing and no masks. Who's being more anti-science? And so to me, it's easy to condescend to that.
Right.
Hashtag fake science, man. Fake science.
Well, and also I want to say to Brock again, if you want to defend your position, Brock, you come on the panel and talk. Because here's the irony to me is he's been commenting on our character, but yet he's this whole time. So it's ironic that he's saying we're being condescending. It's like he says that kind of stuff constantly. So he's an enormous hypocrite and he's a coward because he won't come on the panel.
He's war.
He gets an invitation to come on every single week, and as you can see now, we're not limited by the space. There's plenty of room for him here.
Oh, yeah. Now that I call tonight, I'm just offering your perspective. It doesn't.
The gauntlet has been dropped.
No, because you attack us on a regular basis, Brock, but you're too much of a pussy to come on the panel. So that's why if you're going to get personal with people, you should get personal.
Have a great night.
Man, you got to use a different word than pussy, because I don't know. I'm the only one here with one of those, and I can tell you what I do with it. I don't think anybody wants to hear those, so we're not going to go into it.
Well, I don't know. Well, maybe.
It's nothing like I would call weak.
Oh yeah, have a great night. Yeah, Tyler.
I'm just saying, like the Betty White School of Philosophy, man. Those things can take a pounding.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's left yet or not, but just in case you're here still, Brock, I would love to know what Brock's position is on these boogaloo type movement people. Where are you at, Brock, in terms of if armed citizens attempt some form of insurrection before or during or after the election, regardless of the outcome, because I don't really necessarily think it matters who wins the election as to whether or not we're in for a rough ride. Whose side are you on? Are there sides? I think I'm on the side of I'm not a fascist, and I believe in democracy. That's my side. And I want our republic to survive. And
Is that a real comment? They're true God-fearing patriots?
No, he's trolling.
I'm like, is that sarcasm or I can't tell?
Yeah, that's sarcasm. Deep Ash Trade is definitely being sarcastic.
They might be well defined like that, but I don't think that's really a good thing.
And again, this is the thing that I would love Brock to answer that, because the right wing is always going off how Antifa is the biggest, scariest thing, because they punched a few people and destroyed some property. But until Antifa people that identify themselves as Antifa go around with threatening armed insurrection and threatening to kill people on an organized basis.
Yeah.
But again, where is he? Crickets. No condemnation, Brock. Nothing. You don't have nothing to say.
The Department of Justice has said about 73% of domestic terrorism is these right-wing extremist groups, like the Boogaloo.
And a lot of them have been training and recruiting, and like this plot against Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Apparently, they had surveilled her house on multiple occasions, and they had run drills and all this stuff. And normally law enforcement doesn't act unless they're absolutely sure something's right about to happen. So think about that. And if that one went off, there would have almost certainly been a domino effect of a chain of events that followed it. Just think of Portland, and before you knew it, other parts of the country were erupting as well. Jack, by the way, is it still going on in Portland or what?
Not so much. A part of that is that the protests aren't as localized. They've kind of moved to neighborhoods, and they're smaller protests. Certainly nothing has been on fire for the last couple of weeks. Not that there were that many fires in the first place. That was very much overblown. But I continually find it strange how Portland is sort of this, like, from the rest of the media's perspective, it's this, chaos and anarchy and everything's burning down. And living here, I'm like, it really is not. It's very
Oh,
boring
come
and
on.
normal.
We've both achieved living in the anarch free zone, man. Come on. Like,
I normally
do-
I normally don't do this because I think it's wrong to
anarchist
base
territory.
an opinion just off somebody's picture, and like what the kind of person they are by what they look like, you know, in a picture. But when the mug shots came out of the 7 guys that were arrested and charged for the kidnapping plot on the governor of Michigan,
They
there was
all look
one
like
guy-
pumpkin heads.
Well, yeah, but there was the one guy, Adam Fox, real smug-looking son of a bitch. And
Who's the
when I
dude
saw
with-
his picture, I said to Peach, I said, I guarantee you, he is the mastermind. Or if he's not the mastermind, he was the guy that got up during their meetings and was shouting, "Hell yeah, hell yeah," because he absolutely looks like that kind of a douchebag. And then, like later on that day or the next day, an article came out where they talked about Adam Fox was the guy who was the mastermind, and I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I could tell by looking at him. He's just that kind of an asshole. He's the smart one, and he's angry, and he's evil. All the guys around him were a bunch of dimwits who just followed what he said.
Right.
What did you think about that sheriff who basically gave them an alibi on live TV?
Yeah, it was fucking.
Wouldn't you call that classically an accomplice?
Some of those
I
who
mean,
work
I'm just
forces
wondering.
of pain that
I mean, he's been on stage with them as well. I mean, he's got to be one of them, right? He's just, I know that I'm innocent until proven guilty. I know it's jumping to conclusions, blah blah blah, but circumstantial evidence is pretty strong.
Citizen's arrest. I don't think it's legal in Michigan for a citizen to arrest the governor on a citizen's arrest. I mean, the sheriff said it was, but I don't think it is.
Well, like Paul, to your point, you know, as if you heard me say it, but some of those who work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Right. Well, and there's also sort of right-wing privilege when it comes to these kinds of things. I mean, at Ammon Bundy's farm, there was, you know, tons, or his ranch.
God, that is a name. Ammon Bundy. That's like that name is up there. Like when you said that, it just like registered in my head up there with a name like Cotton Mathers. I was like, man, that is a serious like.
Yeah.
Well,
no. I mean, they had a standoff with federal agents, pointed guns at federal officers. And then, you know, there's no consequences. They took over the Malheur National Forest building, and no consequences from that. Now, part of that is, yeah, part of that is Oregon prosecutor ineptitude. They built a really terrible case, and really they did everything wrong. But it's very interesting how frequently you see that. You know, Dylan Roof was bought a cheeseburger on his way to jail. You know, and just law enforcement can't do enough to bend over backwards and be nice to, you know,
white. Yeah, white.
Is.
But if you're a black guy hailing the police for help, you might get shot.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know, and this goes to what we talked before about you know. And we talked before about privilege and the whole thing, and some of the discussions before we talked about how some people like have taking a bigger piece of the pie than they're due, and how what the effect that has, you know. And we talked about slavery. So you know, 250 years of slavery, and then 150 years of being shunted into ghettos and being denied credit and being denied, you know, living wherever you want and all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, I was thinking about when we were talking before about socialism, communism, and all these different things. And so to the people that are like freaking out, like BLM is socialist, which actually nothing on their website. Well, they kind of say a little bit, but they're really not. But even there, how could I wouldn't be surprised if you basically take a people and you literally steal from them for 2.5 centuries, and then steal from them maybe a little bit less for another century, and then you extra illegally do other things to keep them down and keep them back, so that effectively the average black person literally has no wealth at all.
Right.
It would be no wonder that person would say, well, fuck a system based on the ownership of wealth, the centralization of wealth, because we've never been part of that system, so fuck it. We have no stake in that system, so let's destroy that and create a new system where that's more equitable. That stands to reason.
There's that famous video of the woman saying that you guys broke the social contract. Why should we feel we have any investment in this? I don't care if all buildings burn. You know,
right? We don't own anything.
Yes, but doesn't that kind of translate though to those that support the movement are supporting the dismantlement of capitalism?
Well, I'll own that. I'm anti-capitalist here. I totally support the dismantling of the most destructive ideology in human history.
Right.
Yes.
Now, in my case,
I'm so object to that statement.
I'm not the anti-capitalist, but again,
go fight, Jack. Go fight.
As a descendant of people who were, and according to my DNA, apparently I descend from early slaves. So we're, so 1619 is probably not too far off for me. But so when you have that it's wealth taking away, and then you have people saying, well, we don't owe you anything because I didn't take it. And I'm like, no, you're sitting on a pile of wealth that your ancestors stole, and then you denied to my ancestors. And now when I'm saying, you know what, maybe there's a better way to do that, or maybe you kind of owe us a gimme, even to the fact of like when people get upset about affirmative action, which really affirmative action, people think it's quotas. It's not. It's literally like, hey, if all other things being equal, give it to the people who were held back for centuries and had their wealth stolen from them and were marginalized in under law for 350 years. So and it's even people on the left, unfortunately, that are not clear on that, don't understand that, that where and where the country is, why the country has been as successful as it has, partly what Jack was talking about before, stealing from the native people, stealing from the slaves, and stealing from people in other countries that we had power and sway in.
Well, I mean, I
recognize that.
I've spent this week sort of learning about Cecil Rhodes, which was a figure I was only sort of passingly familiar with, not being
the one they wanted to take off of the statue off of the university, correct?
So Cecil Rhodes is the guy who Rhodesia is named after.
The diamond guy, right?
Yeah, because he owned two countries and was the prime minister of a third country. And many of the complaints I have about capitalism were really invented by Cecil Rhodes, his legislation that made it so that it was impossible for Africans to simply live off the land the way humans have for hundreds of millions of years, or at least hundreds of thousands. Suddenly, if you had land, you had to pay taxes on it, which means you had to work for somebody, and your farming didn't count as work, etc. I don't want to go into the whole thing. There's really, really great resources out there for anybody who wants to learn about Cecil Rhodes. But many of the complaints I have about our system today come directly from that period and that extraction of wealth from another continent for the exclusive purpose of white supremacy. I mean, he was like a modern Proud Boy style white supremacist,
and that's basically feudalism, like you said. From what you're talking about, basically saying, you have to pay taxes just because, and even though you're not drawing an income from your property,
right. Well, I mean, capitalism is feudalism. It's got a new coat of paint. There's a few other sort of mechanisms as a part of it, but it is essentially the same set of principles with minor tweaks. And it makes sense because capitalism replaced feudalism. It's sort of the direct sort of, descendant of feudalism, and it's got many or all of the same problems. There's a few things that capitalism does better and has improved on. I'm not saying that it's never done anything good in the history of the universe, but it is also the most destructive ideology in human history.
More destructive
and will kill us all.
More destructive than feudalism?
Feudalism isn't destroying the planet. I mean, feudalism isn't bringing about climate change that will literally end us as a species.
I don't know. I think if the population was large enough during feudalism, it might have.
Possibly. And there's not a really great number of distinctions between the two philosophies, honestly. Like the main difference in capitalism is that people who are not there on site can offer investment and charge or get returns on investment, and there's usury and some other things. But
one other one is that while yes, certainly wealth tends to be passed down, so there's kind of a there is some level of inheritance of power, but it's not automatic. Like if you're born to a king, you're born to a duke, you automatically had sway over people,
right?
Regardless of anything, and I won't say it was impossible to lose, but it was difficult to lose your power.
Right. Well, one of the things that feudalism didn't have is this expectation of infinite growth. Feudalism was not based on that, and so in that particular way, I think capitalism is more destructive than feudalism. And that expectation for infinite growth is really the part of capitalism that's going to kill us, unless we figure out how to change it so it's sustainable. And from my understanding and reading, then you're definitionally not dealing with capitalism anymore once you remove that sort of pyramid structure that requires infinite growth.
What would you, I'm curious, what would you actually call that? Like, is there a name for what that system would, because I agree that, like, so the whole crap about free market capitalism is exactly that. It's a big steaming pile of crap. It's stupid. And every time somebody brings up, well, just take your money and use it and go vote elsewhere, I'm just like, man, you're an idiot. So, but I believe that capitalism has literally led to the greatest advancements in the course of human history. So, like, we've done more under a capitalist society in 200 years than huge swaths of history before us and peoples before us. But I don't think that means because obviously it's not perfect. It's not the place to stay, right? It is not sustainable the way that it is. And we have a regulated capitalist society, but it's either not regulated the right way or it's not regulated enough.
Both.
Or both. Like, those things are mutually exclusive. And so I'm curious though, so if you begin to move away from like one of the things that is considered a defining factor, as you were saying, surely somebody's written some manner of something on this. What do you call something that is like capitalism without those terrible crappy parts that make it crappy?
I mean, everything that is sort of post-capitalism. I mean, obviously Marx came up with sort of some perspectives on that. There's lots of people who will disagree with any of
right. Marxism is socialist, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it's getting into the weeds because there isn't a single defined, like, this looks like the best idea, because if we did have that, there would be ways that we'd be moving toward that now. I think that our biggest problem right now is very similar to when the United States became a democracy. Democracy had not been tried in 700 years at the point that the United States was founded. And so it inherently was trying to invent a bunch of things and create sort of new words to describe things that you had plenty of different people writing about. And it was the synthesis of, hundreds of different writers of Western philosophy sort of being argued back and forth in coffee shops or coffee houses, and then eventually, in the the Constitutional Congress, trying to figure out what was the best way to do this thing that hadn't been tried in a real long time. And that's the period that we're in right now with capitalism. We don't have that thing that, well, this is tried and true and works. We have the Northern European, mixed economic models, and there's a variety of them. You have, from Iceland, who went from very free market capitalism to fairly socialistic, highly regulated capitalism in a very brief period of time. And I think Iceland is a really good model to look at.
If only we could just fire everyone like Iceland did and then hire new people.
Part of the problem here, and I guess this goes to Jack's point about modern, at least modern American capitalism looking a lot like feudalism, is we have entrenched interests that have a lot of power, who, even though they are a tiny, tiny fraction of the population, can use their wealth and power to manipulate things to prevent that change. Because of course they will, because they would lose out in that. They're probably the only ones really that stand to lose from that realignment is because they'd lose. Although, as I said, many times before, because the fact that we don't live in the economy is not a zero-sum game, that the growth of the economy would probably mean that they'd be richer than they are now. They just wouldn't have they would just have a smaller percentage of the overall pie. But because of greed, people, they'd rather be the bigger fish in the small pond because it gives them proportionally more power.
Now, earlier, it was mentioned that a lot of the push within Black Lives Matter, I'm kind of going back a little bit, a lot of the push within Black Lives Matter is to essentially dismantle capitalism. And that message to a lot of people is that they're a socialist grouping of people. So isn't that, because socialism would be an alternative to capitalism. Isn't it understandable why so many people on the right don't support Black Lives Matter, but then they get told that they're racist or they don't care about Black lives just because they don't like what the movement is standing for?
But they also don't understand what socialism means either. So,
if we're talking about the dictionary definition of socialism, if we're just talking about trying to have some socialist policies, that's different than
exactly why they're fearing something that isn't going to happen. I mean, the idea that Joe Biden is socialist is absolutely hilarious.
Oh, I agree. It's hilarious. There are people, like I said earlier, there are people that anyone to the left of Biden are considered communist to some people. I agree. There's some madness going on, but
a decentralized.
I think it's important not to surrender the Overton window to these people.
Yeah. No, a decentralized movement like Black Lives Matter might have some people that are like among the founding members that want socialism or are socialists, and there may be members of the movement that feel the same way. That doesn't mean that the movement is a socialist movement.
Right.
So to be against Black Lives Matter because there are people involved in the movement who are socialist makes no sense. If you're against Black Lives Matter, then you are against Black lives. I mean,
that's a falsity. That's just false, man. That's just absolutely false.
Here's the other thing.
That's like saying that if someone doesn't like some of the things that some extremist feminists are doing, then you're against women's rights. It's just as stupid.
It's nowhere near the same thing as that. Black Lives Matter is literally Black Lives Matter. It isn't a socialist movement. There are people in the movement that are socialists, but the movement itself is not.
And actually,
the movement itself is saying Black Lives Matter. If you're anti that, then you're anti-Black lives.
Well, and here's even to your point to your analogy to feminism. But see, here's the problem though, is what people are doing is they're saying, okay, let's look at Chanty Binks and evaluate all of feminism based on her. then that's really the problem. It's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. So that's what Rob's saying. You can point to people that are, you know, in the leadership, or, you know, such as it is, saying, oh, or they're socialists, but that doesn't mean the entire movement is. Secondly, but then again, they're doing the same thing back to the BLM that they feel is happening to them, of being lumped together. It's hypocritical, because they're lumping first, and when they lump others, they get lumped themselves, and they get mad about it. Like, well, that's real shitty, doesn't it? But the other thing too is that there's a huge difference when you listen to a lot of them, they're asking for Sweden, not Soviet Union, because Soviet Union wasn't socialist anyway. But in your right winger's mind, socialism means China, means Soviet Union, means North Korea, none of which are actually socialist countries.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say that capitalism has failed from my perspective. I have a bachelor's degree, 2 of them, and I'm working on my master's right now, but I have a really good paying job, and I can't afford to buy a house in the city where I work. And I feel like that's wrong. Yeah. The pay in my city is stagnant. It might go up like 2% each year, but the housing prices are going up like 7 to 15% each year. And every year, a house is further and further out of my grasp.
Well, and big part of that is
the money get to collect more and more money off the money that they already had. And me coming late into the game, I'm never going to be able to own anything. They can always grow their money faster than me, because they started with more than me.
Well, and then that comes to the lack of regulation, and this is what happens. Speculators from outside the area come in who don't live there and buy up houses because, of course, it's good property and it's popular and people vacation there and all that kind of stuff. And this is the same problem they had in Florida. We were actually thinking of buying property in Florida, and in a lot of communities, they've actually passed laws that say you can't buy a property unless you're going to live there for 2 years, because what's happening is the housing market was getting destroyed because people outside money was coming in, buying up houses, driving up the housing market, and then renting it out, and so that nobody local could afford it. It's the same situation you're in right now. So really, that's where I always come down to the regulation is needed, because the lack of regulation is what allows people to run rampant. And part of that problem is when we said free market capitalism, is that no one in the right wing understands anymore what free market means. It doesn't mean without regulation. It doesn't mean without obligation. It means that is unbidden by unnecessary regulations, that we don't have arbitrary laws. But having laws that say, hey, let's protect the local community so that they can still afford to buy houses, that's not an unnecessary, nor is it an unfair regulation. But it doesn't exist in a lot of places, unfortunately, because again, we worship. A lot of people worship the free market and don't know what it is.
I have a large bit of schadenfreude for Trump getting COVID. I am enjoying him being sick and his pain in this, and all of the media attention he gets over this, and I know that he's suffering, and I'm happy.
Are you bringing us up from last week? I mean, I feel targeted by your comments.
Right? I have more schadenfreude and more of this sense of happiness that everyone who owns more than 10 houses in my city and is using them for Airbnbs can't rent these houses out because nobody wants Airbnbs in a pandemic. And they are unable to pay all these mortgages they took out, and they're going house poor. I feel great that the whole reason why I can't buy a house, those people are suffering right now.
Right.
And I hope that they lose everything for what they did, because I have not been able to buy a house. And I did everything right. I went and got a degree. I got an education. I work hard, and I still can't afford,
And
capitalism.
To that point, imagine being, 20 or 25 and just entering school and knowing that you're going to come out of school with $120,000 in debt, and you won't be able to buy a house. I mean,
he is 25.
It's a cumulative.
He's like Morgan Freeman. He was born at that age.
So I because some of my clients are in their 30s, even 40s, and still living with their parents. You know, and when I was a kid, that was an insult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Now,
yeah. No doubt.
Smart thing to do.
Yes. Both
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things.
Yeah, when I was
The
younger,
majority of housing stock should be public housing. You know, I think that.
oh, we lost him. Yeah, when I was
Okay, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this right now. The next time somebody puts up a screen share when I am halfway through a sentence, I am going to
But
scream.
the only person that can do that is Gothic Funk.
No.
What? Wait, that's not true.
anybody can share the screen.
What do you do? Scream? Can you scream, "Ow, my penis"?
Ow, my penis.
Yes. Even you. If you get cut off, anybody gets cut off by a screen share, scream, "Ow, my penis."
Well, I was just trying to say, I think the majority of housing should be, or at least half of housing, this housing stock in any market should be public housing. That would create lots of jobs in terms of construction for a start. And
Isn't that the Singapore
it
system?
just makes logical sense. You know, if everybody has to be rich enough to buy a house in order to live in it, you have to have a market where the wages will support that. And a lot of mortgages now are out of the reach of what the market's wages will support. That's just an unfortunate fact. So public housing to me is the only solution to that, because you're always going to need more housing stock. The population is always going to grow. You know what I mean? And yeah.
There's this interesting system, and I'm hoping I'm correct when I say it's Singapore. It might not be. I have to go back and look at this, but it's where the government owns the land, but buildings and houses are privately owned or built by contractors, and it's an interesting thing because what it does is it limits the sale between houses, and it makes sure to hold open this market for basically anybody to be able to afford to buy a house, by the government sort of owning the land as the communal property of all the citizens of the country.
Egypt has something similar where the military owns all the land.
Interesting.
It's the military, and if you want to buy a house, if you live and you want to buy a house, you have to deal with the military and get their permission to be able to do it.
Well, in the UK, the Queen, or the monarch, I should say, more accurately, owns an awful lot of the land underneath the houses. And if you buy a freehold house, that means you've bought the land and the house. If you don't buy freehold, you've just bought the house. But the land underneath it belongs to the crown or the duchy or whichever it might belong to. That's in Britain. That's an archaic system that still exists to this day.
Right. I think that there's one major distinction is that I'm sorry, some keyboard is clacking loud.
That's me. That's me. I'm sorry. I type really loud. I'll put myself on mute.
In my speakers, it was the loudest thing. But there's a distinction between the people of the nation, the citizens of the nation, collectively owning the land, and a monarch. And I just wanted to put that out there. But I am interested in this concept. Maybe we could try it with a town or a county or something in the United States where the land is collectively owned by the citizens of that county. I'm not sure how it would work, but it'd be an interesting experiment.
Well, I mean, the thing is, we have that to some degree. I mean, in Newark and Elizabeth, they're both enterprise zones. They built over the basically from when Clinton was president, and from probably like mid '90s to probably mid 2005 or so, there was a lot of houses built on public land. And I'm not sure who owns the land anymore. I don't know if that's still in, but I think they are. The land is still in the public domain, but the houses are owned, because that was the idea, is to try to help people in depressed areas be able to own houses. So there's quite a lot of construction, quite nice construction too. And they're not massive houses, you know, they're very utilitarian, but they're attractive and they're functional. So it's been done. It just hasn't been done enough.
Right. I mean, I'm trying to get back to Kazum's point, ultimately, which is that there's a lot of propaganda about what BLM is or any of these movements. And I think that if anybody spends any time sort of paying attention to leftist spheres, like the discussion is about how to solve problems. BLM is trying to solve the problem of police violence that is specifically over targeting a demographic based on immutable traits that they can't control. And how do we fix that? There's lots of people who are afraid of this idea of defunding the police because it sounds like you're talking about a lawless territory with nothing. Right. And yeah, Biden's also not understanding. And if we just look at, you know, a line item budget from most cities spend almost 40% of their budget just on their police force. That's kind of similar to the way the United States spends on their military. We put an enormous amount of resources into something that isn't actually all that effective.
At least I feel like our military can destroy the rest of the world. I do not feel that way about our police.
I have a question for you guys.
I destroy towns for sure.
I have a question for everybody on the panel. I mean, when you're driving around about your day, how often or do you ever come across the thin blue line flags hanging off the back of his car?
In thousands of them
too often.
Yes.
Thousands
Too often.
of them in a day.
I'm with Kazum.
Thankfully, in Union
What did you say, Kazum?
I said too often.
Too often.
Yeah. This is Oregon.
Yeah.
Same with people who they have a truck and they'll attach these Trump flags to the back of them. Yeah, too many of those too.
Yeah, those people also have trucks with testicles.
Yeah, but thankfully where I live, and I only live again like an hour from Rob. In Union County, there's nary a sign. In fact, Suzanne was in.
Don't knock those steel balls. I hung them off my strap.
Next town over, and it's a well-off area, which we were expecting that this would be a Trump area, and it was like one Trump sign and a sea of Biden signs. So at least where I live, it's almost non-existent.
Well, I'll tell you what, right? I
accidentally left the stream. I just left the stream.
Well, one thing before Paul goes back, just real quick to what you were saying, both of you, was the irony of the right wingers that are all paranoid about, defund the police, meaning a lawless society. Is a lot of these people are a lot of
people are attacking governors in Michigan. What?
Well, the thing is that they're basically like they're like lawless anarchists themselves.
Yeah.
And, they got their gun and they don't need anybody. So it's like, so here the police are agents of the state, the power that they're so afraid of, and yet they sidle up with the power that they're afraid of. That because if anyone's going to come knock their door in, it's going to be the police. It's not going to be BLM people.
I have made so many yellow flag snake memes.
I just drove. We just got back last weekend, but I just drove from the middle of Colorado all the way to the Bay Area in California, and then from there up to Idaho, and then back down here to Colorado. Right. So we covered a lot of country, and the entire time in the back window of our car, we had a sign that's about this big, about bigger than a binder paper anyway, and it said "Trump lies, democracy dies." And we were kind of like interested to see what the reactions would be. And I would like to note that we did not have this sticker on the back when we drove to St. Louis a month ago. Different. I wasn't brave enough for that, and neither was she. But no, to my surprise, and we got a couple of snarky looks, and we got a lot of thumbs up and honks and whatever that were sort of positive. But most of the negativity that we got, it was kind of like aggressive driving, and I'm ashamed to say most of it was in my native California, which I was kind of surprised by.
Well, we think
California is a whole country, basically. It's huge.
Well, also though, if you figure if someone is conservative in a Democratic area, they probably feel extra under siege because they're not as many. So that's their passive aggressive way to get back because they're surrounded by people who don't agree with them.
I want to say in Biden's defense, he has like a plan for like $300 million for like community policing, which is the same thing as the whole defund the police thing. He just wants to, redistribute where the money's going, but he does not want the label of defund the police, just like he would never want the label that was saddled to Bernie of democratic socialist. He wants to start off with a better label for it. So he's calling it community policing, but there's still going to be some therapists that are doing ride-alongs with cops going out to calls that, are 5150,
I gotta say, I think it's incredibly stupid that, I mean, if they didn't want people to think that it's actually defunding the police, I don't know why they chose that name. There are so many movements that people choose really stupid names that give people the wrong idea of what's going on.
They see that all the time.
A couple of things. I was going to say a couple of minutes ago, hey, Paul, is Bionic Dance waiting in the waiting room? And apparently she was. And then to what Kazoom was saying, the problem is that people like bumper stickers. And it's something that Kate says almost every time if she's on about the left is really, really, really bad at marketing.
So bad.
Oh man, they need to run every slogan past punsters, wise asses, and linguists to see how it can be twisted. Because obviously everything can be twisted, but why make it easy for them? That's part of why I objected. My Seattle peeps decided to rename Chaz to Chop. And I'm like, so you want to make it sound more violent when they're already saying, look at all the rioters and you're all terrorists? That was so dumb. Mind you, their reasoning was that Chaz sounds like that guy you hang out with in the basement, or the rec room. And, he's obviously a white guy because his name is Chaz, and I'm just like, yeah, I never even had that thought until you told me that. So I don't think
I played football in high school. The quarterback of my team is a black guy named Chaz. Just pointing out.
I do not associate the name Chaz with a white dude.
They did. I mean, don't ask me to defend it.
It makes me think of that show Charles in Charge. And who was the main guy in that show? He wasn't white.
Dale.
Is he white?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they ever.
Major Trumper too.
Right. Well, the thing is that the name Chaz is one of the possible abbreviations of Charles.
Yeah.
It tends, but see, his words Charlie sounds very informal. Chaz sounds, very upper crusty and
What are you talking about? Chaz sounds like
Chaz is that guy who introduces you to weed.
Yeah, that's it.
Chaz,
Yes.
all I can think of with Chaz is Chaz Bono.
I remember there were others, like there were a bunch of characters on TV shows named Chaz. I'm not sure I've ever met one in real life.
Yeah. Well, the Chaz I knew was pretty straight-laced, but cool. I mean,
although in high school we did have a Potsy. We had a dude that was nicknamed Potsy.
Well, but I mean, like every Charlie I've ever known who decides to nickname himself is always Chuck or Chucky. Everyone, I've never met a Chaz.
Chaz just kind of reminds me of like probably a guy that hangs out with Brett Kavanaugh and Squee.
Right. Well, exactly, and that's the whole thing. It's like if you think of like trading places, and Dan Aykroyd's character, like one of his friends is probably named Chaz.
In the UK,
I still picture Chaz as the guy who hangs out with the football team. He's got that sweater tied around his neck, but he's probably too big for his britches, like he's trying to fit in, but he's not really that guy, is how I picture Chaz.
I think I always thought Scott Baio was Mexican.
No.
If anything, I would have guessed Italian.
Italian.
Okay, maybe Italian. I don't know. I guess like what Whitey White was. I don't know, but then
Hey.
again, like this is like my memory from
He was a little olive. He was a little olive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Not all of us white people look alike.
No, you do.
Well,
Well, if you look at the pictures of those militia guys, you know, you get that impression.
There. Me and him look kind of similar.
You do. I mean, you both have beards, and
well, I mean, like all of those militia dudes do seem to have, like, if not actually a uniform, at least a theme to their personal appearance.
maybe
Paul's
Jack-
gone again.
Is in the car with the
Maybe
beard.
Paul's gone again. Everybody hide.
like this.
We should,
Oh, wait,
that's actually Howie Mandel did that on one of his first stand-up skits like a million years ago. A guy got up to use the bathroom, and Howie said, "Okay, everybody hide." Right, and then when I started streaming on Blog TV about 500,000 years ago, I would do that all the time. I would say, "Oh, look, somebody just left the chat. We know they're going to come back in, so everybody hide." And I'm the only one on screen. So,
Yeah. You know, I kind of want to, like when the pandemic's over, get into flash mobs. Like, I've only ever done one, and it was kind of fun. Basically, just what we did was a freeze. You know, all of a sudden, it's some prearranged signal, everyone, and just stands there for a while. It's kind of like I've only gotten to photobomb someone once. That was fun, too, because the people I did it to totally appreciated it. They were like, that was awesome. So,
You know what would be the coolest flash mob? To have, let me see how many, like 100 million leftists and left of center vote. That would be the best flash mob.
My brain went so many other places in that brief pause that was right there, and they had nothing to do with the left.
Elaborate.
I still want to go, like, do a flash mob where everyone is in some crowded area, but not too crowded, and everyone starts coughing at once. But I was told that that's like, you know, shouting fire in a crowded theater, so don't do it. But still, it sounds like a blast.
Well, that's one thing that's now, if you got to clear your throat and you're out in public and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna wait to get to my car because everyone's gonna freak out and think, you know, start throwing things at me. He's got the COVID. Get away from me.
well, I mean,
Can I take my mask off to cough because I don't want to get the inside of it dirty?
There have been a couple of times when,
I'm out in
like,
public all the time, and it's just like I feel like I have to cough because of the smoker's cough. I'm like, oh crap, I can't. People start throwing shit.
there's been a couple of times like my mom calls me on the phone and I've kind of been smoking weed. So, you know, all of a sudden I get that, you know, weed throat and I'm like, no, wait, mom can't hear that because she's Jewish and she'll go full yenta. So I really don't want my mom to hear me coughing.
What does yenta mean?
It's basically like a slightly older woman who's a busybody who will butt into everything and very frequently will try to set you up with someone. That's a yenta, and they're almost exclusively Jewish.
Yes. I literally have a Jew sitting on my couch right now, and I'm going to verify this with him. Hey, Lou.
Yes.
What's a yenta?
A yenta is an old woman, particularly one who either is a busybody or a matchmaker.
All righty then.
Oh my God, almost word for word.
That's beautiful. Oh man.
That was beautiful.
Okay, now that I'm done.
A shiksa is.
Oh, well, that's someone who's not actually Jewish, like, but a woman.
And does the same thing? I don't know.
No. Shiksa is you don't want to be called a shiksa. That's a nasty thing to be called somebody.
Yeah. Although being a shiksa goddess is a thing for a lot of Jewish dudes.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
like they want to date a shiksa goddess. A lot of them.
Is that like What is that? What does that mean?
Well, it's like I want to date someone who's not Jewish, unlike the rest of my social circle. And a lot of these chicks and goddesses are like rich.
So Ivanka Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Sure,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah,
Although,
for
you know, I
Jared.
don't want to get Trump all over me.
Super rich, pretty damn hot, and will convert.
And probably makes out with her dad.
That sounds like you.
Or does he make out with her? I mean, I feel like there's a semantic there that's important.
Well, I'm reminded of National Lampoon's Vacation, where it's like, I have a boyfriend and we French kiss. So everyone does that. Yeah, but my daddy says I'm the best at it. Yeah, it's like, that was one of the best scenes. Oh, I love it. But anyway.
Yeah, I was raised by my grandmother who her father was Jewish, so I got a taste of the Jewish upbringing in my house. So all those black Jews, like me and Peach, those black Jews.
Which one's Pete?
Peach.
Oh, I heard Pete. Okay.
No.
Anyway.
Joe, did you read the press release I wrote in Insider New Jersey?
Yes. Yeah, you posted the other day, right?
Yeah.
Wait, where did this happen? Well, you know what? I'm not even like connected to you outside of this place, and I wish I was, because then I could follow your stuff, which I would do, and I would retweet you and things like that. You know,
Okay, well,
can I join your Twitter army?
I'm running for county office. You know that. Okay, so one of the current sitting members on the board wrote a press release in which she named me and said that I was anti-Semitic and anti-Christian. And I live, it might be New Jersey, but I live in an area of New Jersey that is very much Alabama.
Sorry, just anti. Excuse me.
So, I mean, saying that someone here in this county, saying someone is anti-Christian is the kind of thing that will get your house shot up. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing that people
and decided they were going to slap it down like, oh, we're just going to call him. Like,
because some of my Facebook posts are atheistic, and you know. So anyway, so I wrote a press release, and I one of the things that I said was, you know, my girlfriend is Ashkenazi Jew, and 2 of my children are also. You know, you apparently don't know what anti-Semitic means. It's not a religious disagreement or a religious difference. Anti-Semitism is basically racism.
yes,
You know, it's hatred towards an ethnicity. So anyway, I got a lot of
charitable
a lot of
definition is
attention
that
over
he
that.
just doesn't know what they mean. That's charitable. I think it's always valuable to point out what the more charitable position is, because the less charitable position is that you're just stupid.
Guys, my internet keeps dumping out. So I think I should wrap up the show, and I will have to
Like an hour early.
in the after show. But yeah, and it's getting past 3 hours anyway, so I think I'll wrap it up. But thanks, and isn't it great that nobody has to be bumped anymore?
Yeah.
Hey.
I mean, I'm not
No.
saying nobody should, but
I mean, we even have room for Brock.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's ever going to come back on camera. Doubtfully, you know, he seems to have lost faith in the project, and
But if that's the case, why does he sit there like and heckle in the peanut gallery? Why is he willing to do that? But
From
then
his
not willing
point of
to come on
view,
camera?
it's like shooting fish in a barrel. To him, that's what this is. To him, we're all soft targets. To him. And the irony is, you know, I mean, like, I don't know. I've taken the piss out of Brock more than any other person on the internet back in the day.
oops. It is funny the things that Brock thinks are a win when he puts them in the chat, because they're so not.
Yeah.
He thinks he has more. he thinks he has more power in the chat because he doesn't have to wait to talk. He can just say whatever and not have to worry about the timing.
The problem is, though, he never actually supports anything pro. It's just like, oh, you guys are bad. And he doesn't even try to point out why he thinks we're wrong. It's just, oh, you guys are terrible. Oh, you're kind of telling. It's all personal attacks. So that's why I find it so hypocritical of him, because it's like, dude, you're doing nothing but personal attacking us on a personal level. You're not, comparing and contrasting your ideas with ours.
He doesn't put forth an argument of any kind.
Right, and as you noticed, I called him a coward, and he went away. He's like, oh, because they were, oh, I'm just putting out ideas there. Yeah, Brock, because you're a coward and you won't actually put your ideas forward.
Whatever you name call it, I'm out. I can't handle it.
To play devil's advocate, we're not really supposed to be getting personal on this avenue. I mean, that's kind of part of the deal.
Okay, well, let me just say that we know I vicious and brutal deaths, and I'll just be over here because I'm lying.
Yeah, I'm just gonna diagnose
Actually,
it
when
as
I rise to power, all of yours will be the painless stats. I promise.
Wait, what?
Yeah, we kind of missed part of that conversation.
I'm being a brat.
Overlord mode. What just happened right there?
Oh man,
that's beautiful. Well,
I would say that.
Okay, I'll amend my statement. I'll say Brock is behaving cowardly. How's that? That's not a personal attack. That's describing his behavior, not his person, not his character. Although I think he's a coward too. But that's another.
Oh, come on, just call him a pussy.
Yeah.
Was that?
I will say that this format with all these different having this many cameras on, we probably will have to be more conscientious about muting ourselves in the future.
That's why we do this.
I totally have the power to mute everybody in place. If I wanted to shut people up, I really could, but I've never actually exercised that power because I kind of think it's wrong and tyrannical, really. But, because we're all adults here and we can behave ourselves. Listen, I'm going to end the broadcast before the internet kicks me off again. So say goodbye, everybody.
Have fun.
All right, and go up and push the button and broadcast.